How's that for a tongue twister? Animation Innovation Hub. To take this conversation further, it is my privilege to invite someone who has been steering this with undivided attention. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Rajiv Chandrasekhar, Minister of State for Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India, India's Techade, a decade of opportunities. Mr. Chandrasekhar.
Good evening all. First of all, thank you, Economic Times, for inviting me to speak at the Global Business Summit. Thank you also for letting me speak on a topic that is dear to my heart and something I'm very passionate about, which is the goal and the vision that our Honorable Prime Minister has set in front of our country, which is to make India a technology super hub. He, of course, phrases it differently. He refers to India's Techade. He's also, as is known by all of us, very clear in terms of his goals and expectations. He's also spelt it out as a $1 trillion digital economy goal, for which we are currently working on and engaged in. Before I launch into what we are doing and where we see the digital economy go and where we see the digital opportunity space travel, let me give you what I believe is a context and a backstory to the Indian digital economy in general and India's technology capabilities in particular. I think you will agree that India has been in the tech space for some years now, some decades. Most of what the digital economy was for several years and several decades was what we refer to as the ITES space. India was at various times described as a back office to the world, the service solutions providers to the world's enterprises and governments. And so that was a story for several decades, and indeed in 2014, as we entered into the era of New India and governance of Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, that was really what the digital economy was about. In 2015, in a program not very dissimilar to this, the Prime Minister launched what we all now know as Digital India. And I was part of the audience then, and I had the occasion recently to talk to him as a minister on a similar program, and I said, in that audience, when I heard him speak then in 2015, I too listened to him with, of course, rapt attention, but with a healthy dose of cynicism and skepticism, not even cynicism, but skepticism. Because he outlined a vision in 2015, which may be worth remembering today as we talk about 22-23 and then look forward. He said in 2015 that his objectives of Digital India were threefold. First, he wanted to use technology in a way transforming the lives of Indian citizens, and the age-old narrative of a dysfunctional governance and dysfunctional democracy that India had been known for several decades by the outside world. So that was one. He wanted certainly for technology to be used in government to transform people's lives. The second he laid out in 2015 was that he wanted the economy and digital economic opportunities to expand. He wanted the digital economy to expand, and from there, opportunities for young Indians to be created for their entrepreneurship, for their startups. And the third, which certainly rang close to my own experiences as an entrepreneur, was that he wanted India to be no longer a consumer of technologies alone, but also to be a producer of technologies in the future, to be not just doing software and back office work, but to really design, architect solutions, platforms, devices, products for the coming years of technology. So these were broadly what he set out were goals in 2015. Like I said, I was in the audience and I said, it hasn't happened for so many years. It's certainly not going to happen now. But in 2022, July, I had an occasion when we were celebrating the 6th anniversary of the Digital India. And I was, of course, by then a minister, and I sat next to him and I said in my speech then that if you report card those 3 goals today and see how far we have traveled, then the fact that India has become a preeminent nation in the use of technology for its people, for its governance, for its economy, becomes starkly and sharply clear. In the first goal, for example, for decades, India was known as a country where great people lived, smart people lived, a lot of smart people lived, big population, but governments that never functioned for its people, and that age-old quote from a then Prime Minister that says 100 rupees leaves Delhi, 15 rupees reaches beneficiaries, and the 85 rupees was the cost of governance. That, in a sense, described India for several decades, was turned on its head by use of technology, the building of the India stack, and today when 100 rupees leaves, and I have been as a minister party to many events in remote parts of India where 100 rupees that is sent from Delhi, 100 rupees reaches the beneficiary's account responsively, without leakage, without corruption, without any mediation. And that, more than anything else, describes the power of technology that has transformed the age-old narrative of Indian democracy and Indian governance. Look at the issue of opportunities. In 2010, in Parliament, I remember I was an MP then, I raised this issue how 10 groups in India had cornered 98% of the Indian banking system's net worth. And while there were many smart people in India, most opportunities, you hear about stories of Satya Nadella or Sundar Pichai, opportunities and stardom and success really came only for youngsters without any famous last name or any great connection if they left India, went abroad. And in 22, if you look report card that particular fact, you find today 90,000 startups, 102 unicorns, no famous last names. Nobody is connected with a famous grandfather anyway. They've all built their franchises, built their enterprises, built their brands, raised capital, and made successes on their own. That is again a transformation possible because of technology and digital India. And third is this whole narrative about we should just blandly take technology from the West, be a consumer. I certainly experienced that as a telecom entrepreneur where every piece that I incorporated into my early networks, GSM networks, came from a vendor in Europe, vendor in the US. And perhaps the only thing that we used locally were the little cabins that we then designed and made here and the screwdrivers that used to unscrew the cabinets of the transceivers or the base stations. To today, us having startups that are doing work in 5G, creating pieces of the 5G network that are architected here, designed here, semiconductors, devices, products, software as a service platforms, internet platforms that are scalable, that are delivering services and products to the world. So I think even in that narrative, we have made tremendous progress, and it's certainly clear to the world at large and to us in particular that the future of technology may not be led by India or led by any one country, but certainly India will be amongst the pack of nations that will shape the future of technology, shape the future of products, devices, and platforms. Omar bin Sultan Al Ulama, who's a I can safely refer to him as a friend of mine, who is the digital minister of the UAE, recently said, and I quote, "The future of technology will have the Indian fingerprint everywhere on and everything digital." I didn't say this. I didn't even write the quote for him. He said it. Pat Gelsinger, who used to be my old boss at Intel, he's now the CEO of Intel, and he's a legend on his own in the semiconductor space. In the middle of 2022 said, "I'm deeply optimistic about the coming decade for India, and I see a huge role for India in the technology space." Michael Spence, the Nobel laureate, and he's an economist, he says, "The global economy is undergoing a regime change today, and India is the outstanding performer now." And I can go on about quotes because it's safer to use a quote of a foreigner, because certainly me saying my belief about the future of India's decade, or indeed the Prime Minister on August 15, 2021, describing the India Techade as a decade full of technology opportunities, and that decade of technology opportunities will be built by our young Indians, sometimes doesn't cut it enough or isn't important enough for Indian media, so which is why I have to trot out the observers of the Indian economy and their observations about the Indian economy to in a sense, reinforce our vision about the future digital economy. Why is digital in today's post-COVID world, and I think you all understand the tremendous role that the investments in Digital India, the India Stack played during COVID, and I will not go down that road. I think that case has been made, placed in front of the Indian people, and has been understood and recognized. So I won't stress too much about that. But certainly it's worth having a discussion about why post-COVID, in this changed geopolitical world, where supply chains of all things digital, services and products are undergoing these deep tectonic transformations, why digital technology and India's place in that is so important. In the post-COVID world, and without pretending to be a foreign affairs Mandarin on the subject, I certainly will make the point that geopolitics, economy, trade, and security are all intersecting, and technology is at the intersection of this. And there is a famous quote, almost prescient quote by our national security advisor from, I think, 2016 or 15, when he said that the future battlefields will be dominated by those who have either economic power or technology power, economic power and technology power. And if it is a case of having to choose between the two, the battlefield will be dominated by, and I don't mean battlefield as in battlefield with, guns and arms, but battlefield as in the economic battlefield, will be dominated by those who are strong in technology capabilities. And that thought, that vision is true today. And it is at that intersection that technology lies. And our Prime Minister has laid out a goal of $1 trillion digital economy by 2026. And like I said, we started with our opening balance was the IT as business and the businesses. We have, over the last 5 years, built a nation where 80 crore Indians, 800 million Indians are online. And by 25, that number will be 120 crore, 1.2 billion Indians online, making India the largest connected country in the world, and certainly the largest presence on the global internet is the Indian internet. And this has happened over the last 8-9 years. Our vision going forward, our goals going forward, like I said, hinges around the $1 trillion digital economy mark. We're unwaveringly laser focused on that goal. And that goal will be met, like I said, ITES continues to grow, and that will continue to grow as the digitization of the world is even further accelerating post-COVID. The internet is the other great opportunity for India and Indian startups. With the new digital data protection bill and the national data governance framework policy, the data economy, what we call the internet plus economy, and AI will become another big area for us. And AI, I have referred to, and we view this as a kinetic enabler of the digital economy. I think what ChatGPT has recently shown, and how ChatGPT can take a long-lost, discarded search engine like Bing and suddenly make it competitive and relevant with the dominant force of the Google search engine, tells you the power of AI. We are focused also on the whole compute side. As automobiles siliconize, as mobility is becoming all pervasive, and compute and cloudification, cloudification is driving compute, we will shortly be launching an India Open Compute Initiative, where the devices and products for automobiles and the standards for automobile mobility and computes will be another focus for our startups. High-performance computing, quantum computing, the blockchain. These are all areas that we are building capabilities on. Now, having said that, I want to just clarify and explain to you what we mean by building capabilities. Building capabilities certainly does not mean that in some ministry there will be a few bureaucrats who will sit down there and spearhead this. The ecosystem model that the Honorable Prime Minister has successfully shown us, and I will explain the classic example of that, is an example where the government is the enabler, startups and the Indian academic institutions form a network and a partnership to build capabilities in that area. And a classic example of this is UPI. UPI was built to solve a government problem of DBT, of transmitting government subsidies to a beneficiary without leakage, without any intermediation, accurately and responsively. And that particular application and that particular problem that has been solved by UPA has spawned one of the fastest growing fintech ecosystems in the world. And that model will continuously be played out as the India stack expands and the India stack becomes more and more intelligent. Broadly, let me tell you the areas that we are focused on to realize this $1 trillion digital economy goal. We want to connect all Indians. That's primarily our goal. I said by 25-26, the government of India intends to deliver the internet to 1.2 billion Indians. The 5G, the BharatNet, the 4G in all the border districts. These are all decisions that have been taken by the government and that are being rolled out and executed. The pace at which the government digitalizes is going to accelerate even further. You have seen the India stack. You have seen how public services have gone online. But you will soon see that that process and that digital government will be taken to the next level of digitalizing, and that in turn will spawn all kinds of other startup ecosystems. I spoke about the digital economy goal, the diversification and expansion of the digital economy pie. Strategic technologies, we are very focused, as I said, on quantum computing, high-performance computing, mobility, the India Open Compute, the semiconductors, semiconductor design, microelectronics. The fifth piece of this is global standard cyber laws. We have, as most of you who are observers of the tech space are aware, we have a 22-year-old law called the IT Act that is, in a sense, regulating the internet. And it is certainly by internet standards and by any other standards and dated law. And that will be soon replaced by a combination of the Digital India Act, the Digital Personal Data Protection Bill, and if required, a legislation for cybersecurity or amendments of the Criminal Penal Code to reflect the cybersecurity challenges. Again, for those who are interested, these laws are guided, these rules are guided by our boundary conditions, our principles of openness, safety and trust, and accountability as the desirable outcomes that the government wants to deliver to our digital Nagriks and digital citizens. And the last but not least and most important is talent. It is certainly clear post-COVID that the demand for talent in the tech space, both in India and abroad, is at an all-time high. And that is an area that we are very, very focused on. We have government initiatives, we have public-private partnership initiatives, we are working with the industry. And to give you a specific example, in the semiconductor space where there is such a shortage of talent, the government working with the industry has created a future skills program which will be implemented by 23 April in the higher education and the academic ecosystem in India, which will start churning out VLSI, design engineers, manufacturing engineers, dual degrees, certification, qualifications, diploma skills, in a whole spectrum of activities that span the semiconductor sector. And I suspect that that talent will be talent that will be deployed not just in the Indian semiconductor ecosystem, but also the global ones. So talent is a huge issue, a huge challenge, and it is an area that we are absolutely focused on. So these are 6 areas that we are working on to ensure that the Prime Minister's goals of $1 trillion digital economy, our ambitions, are achieved in the coming years. I can certainly say, as I said to a group of students yesterday in Kerala, in a college outside Cochin, that I've spent about 35 years in technology, and depending on the audience, I say it's 30 or 35. If it's a young audience, I say it's 30. If it's an older audience, I say it's 35. So I think it's safe to say I'm 35 years in tech in this audience. But I have never felt more excited about the possibility of India and technology as I do today, strictly as a professional, not as a minister. And I certainly think that this generation of young Indians today who see themselves entering the workforce in a few years, a couple of years, are the most fortunate ones that the independent India's history has ever created. These young Indians have opportunities that nobody has ever had in the last 75 years, certainly not their parents and their grandparents. And it is in no small part due to the efforts of the last 9 years by Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government. But it is certainly the most exciting time for those who are in tech, be it an investor, be it a workforce participant, entrepreneur, startup, or indeed from a public policy making point of view. I think to policy make and to oversee, to enable such an exciting, energetic, vibrant ecosystem is an absolute pleasure and a privilege. And I'm glad that I was given this opportunity to serve when the Prime Minister did give me this opportunity. And I hope over the coming months and years that we will realize together this dream of $1 trillion digital economy. Thank you again for this opportunity. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Kindly agree to take some questions. The procedure will be about the same. If you have a question, kindly raise your hand and we will get a microphone to you, hopefully. And then you can ask your question. So, any questions? The gentleman in the first row, kindly give a microphone.
Hi, good evening, sir. So my name is Rohit and I represent Pinkerton. It's an American company. I take care of their businesses in India. I just wanted to understand if you could add a few lines on where are we on the Data Protection Act. I know the draft was already there. We've read through that. But what is the progress on that? If you can just add a few words on that, please.
So I can't say anything more than that I've said. I think the bill is ready. And as with all things in government, there's a process before it comes to Parliament. And the process is underway.
Thank you.
There's a gentleman there in the... Thank you. Kindly identify yourself.
Hi, sir. I'm Tvesh Mishra. I work for the Economic Times. Sir, do you think it's time that we start defining what should be AI, ML, Internet of Things? Because we see these words being used very casually by companies. So it's time that we have some standards for that.
No, certainly, I think one of the big things that governments around the world have learned is to start having clearer definitions about these things, because I think we will all agree that big tech platforms escaped regulation for many years by constantly talking about innovation, and that innovation should not be regulated. So we certainly will not want to go down that road again and say as long as people use AI and algorithms, that somehow that is an escape from scrutiny or accountability or regulation. In the architecture of the DIA, this is certainly an area that we have kept in mind, and I think you will find that there will be accountability and there will be a certain sense of scrutiny about everything, including references to AI, because everybody today does an if-then statement and then that becomes AI. But I don't see it that way, and certainly I don't think our young Indians who expect to use these solutions and applications see it that way. So we believe user harm is at the heart of DIA. Openness, safety, and trust are at the heart of the DIA, Digital India Act, and these are areas that we will certainly address. And on the other hand, I want to also say that we are now the chair of the Global Partnership for Artificial Intelligence. India is a chair. And there is not just a use of AI from a point of view of escaping scrutiny and accountability, but there is also an overreach of AI. There is the whole issue of harm and ethical misuse of AI. So those are all these boundaries that we want to build without really coming in the way of innovation, but certainly not allowing innovation to be a reason to escape scrutiny and accountability.
The lady in the front.
Thank you for the opportunity, sir. My name is Vahishta and I'm from Reflexion Learning Solutions. So I'm from the L&D and the training industry. So my question is that while we are doing a lot to kind of bring out technical trainings for the Techade, are we also doing something for the people skills and behavioral skills and life skills?
No, look, so I will only address this in the context of the tech space. And this I said early on in 2022 when the big CEOs of the big Indian companies met me, is that I think skilling and capability development is a partnership between government and industry. And nobody should be under the illusion that it's something outsourced to the industry and to the government. So there is a tendency whenever there is a skill shortage to come crying to the government and say, but oh, skills are short, as if there was an MOU between the government and the industry ki humne koi theka le rakha hai. But we are partners, and therefore we say to the industry, if you project out your pipeline of talent requirement, and you project out what capabilities you want to build in your talent, the government will certainly make 50%, 60% of these steps forward in creating a framework, creating the financing for that. Now, if a company A wants a particular set of soft skills or people skills, because they're deploying engineers and deploying talent in a particular country, that is for them to do. That I don't think the government can start doing that type of micromanagement of skills. But we certainly are here to create a framework, platforms, including platforms that allow digital skilling. And indeed, in the tech space, we have invested over 500 crores. The government has actually funded 500 crores or more of capital to enable private sector to skill. So that's the answer to that.
I think we have a question from a gentleman in the center here. That's right.
Good evening, sir. My name is Ashutosh Srivastav, and I'm in the public relations industry. My question is, we have a huge opportunity in tech, as we all know, and we have a huge workforce and a talented workforce. But there's also a question of an industry academic gap, When freshers come out of college, they are not exactly ready for industry. I have seen it by industry, and I hope that is true for other industries as well. We've seen this skill ministry in the government, and we have heard very good presentation by the Ministry of Railways about fantastic work being done on railways and engineering. Now, why can't we build these case studies into an exposure for these students, so that they can have the exposure to industry learnings while on the go? And maybe some organization who is fifth to it can map this And this will reduce the gap in industry and academics.
Yeah, so first of all, I don't want to burst your bubble and say it's not a brilliant idea, and it is obviously a good idea, but it's neither very outstandingly new. It's an issue that we understand. And what is happening, I'll explain to you, is not that government now starts hard coding and saying what kind of curriculum is employability linked and what kind of curriculum is employable, etc., etc. That is not the job of the higher education ecosystem. The higher education ecosystem is supposed to give high quality education, which we do, and the higher education network does. But what skilling does and what students need to do, and we are creating more and more awareness of this, is that as they do a degree, and by the way, these 42 colleges that I've been to, I almost in every college I evangelize this, that even if you're doing an LLB or you're doing a BA in English or you're doing a BSc in physics, you must during those 4 years or 3 years do some certification programs in skills, some skill. Because degrees give you knowledge, skills give you skills, skill certifications and skill programs give you skills. And the world out there, whether you look at the world through the prism of self-employment and entrepreneurship, or you look at the world through the prism of employment and jobs, today requires skills. So the days when I graduated, and I don't know, maybe you're much younger than me, and maybe even when you graduated, where you just flashed a degree certificate and said, "मुझे नौकरी चाहिए," वो तो चला ही गया अभी. Degree तो चाहिए ही, लेकिन आपके पास क्या skill है? What skills do you have? You have to be able to say in your job interview or when you introspect building a company. So we have 5,800 skilling programs that range from white collar to blue collar, that range from AI and robotics to plumbing and carpentry sales and service. So it is a question of more and more students understanding that it is as important to do skills and skilling, and that the job market and the workforce requirements have in the last 5-7 years, globally by the way, have pivoted from degree alone to degree plus skills.
The gentleman on the far left. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, sir. Sir, my name is Varun Bajaj. I am into law and policy in the new economy space. I run a policy think tank exclusively for all the unicorns. They are part of the association. Sir,
I hope you have stock options in it.
Sir, that's my think tank. I'm the president. So, my question is that the vision of the government is that government would never will enable the business but not be in business. But when we talk to all the stakeholders currently, we have seen a UPI success in the fintech space, but there's a counter view which is emerging, that is the government's intent is to control key businesses in the digital economy also. What UPI did to fintech, a lot of fintech startups had to maneuver their business. And I think recently the input which I am getting is clarificatory on similar nature on ONDC, because that's kind of having a framework on goods and services. So if you could just share your vision on these, the government vision, it will really help startups.
So there is no vision as much as there is a statement of fact, and I think we can all agree to this, that in no space do we want domination by a few companies. And there are many segments of the digital economy and in the digital space that are uncomfortably dominated by 1 or 2 or 3 big companies whom we in jest refer to as big tech, or in scorn refer to as big tech, depending on the mood of the day or the day of the... So our government's view is very clearly that we don't want to discourage anybody from being in India. We want all of the companies to come to India, but we certainly don't want the digital economy to be throttled or to be controlled, because like I said, our policy goals are openness. Open is the first boundary condition. Openness means what? Free and fair and unfettered choice for digital Nagriks. So if it turns out, what is the genesis of ONDC? It turns out that a lot of merchants, a lot of retailers are uncomfortable about the dominance of the 1 or 2 players that in the e-commerce space. And so the government has to intervene and come up with ONDC. Similarly, payments were dominated by foreign platforms in the past, and you have seen during the Russia-Ukraine war how weaponization of those platforms can be easily done by countries who choose to do so. So we certainly think it's part of our national sovereignty of the digital economy, that we build in resilience, we build in redundancy, we build in the ability to run these platforms in India and have access to these platforms and technologies in India. So that is the background to this, so that you understand.
I'm sorry to disappoint you, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm going to request the Honourable Minister for one last question, sir, if you will.
The one lady, yes.
Yes, absolutely. Please go ahead. Can we have...
I'm pressurizing Dalip as knowing him for many years in the theatre industry. My name is Anjali Raina. I work at Harvard Business School, but I've been a banker for many years. First, I'd like to compliment you. You've taken a very difficult topic, and you've spoken about it really well. What I loved was when you said that degrees give knowledge, but skills are important for employability. The issue is that a certificate is not a socially valued item. A degree is. So parents will pay for the degree, but will not pay for the social certificate, for that certificate of employability. And Deepak Lamba spoke about it very well. He said that the rise and fall of NIIT is based on the rise and fall of how computer technology and industry and skilling came into the academic world. So what can you do as the government through a marketing platform to improve the value of something that gives a person employability, which costs less, which doesn't require so much time? You know, just looking at it as a parent, it's a no-brainer. But how do we change the mindset of people to take skills and certificates and give them the same value?
So, frankly, that is a good question, and we should have a separate session for this, for the 4 hours for this, because it's a worthwhile conversation to have. But in a nutshell, let me try and answer this. First of all, I agree with you that certification is seen as less valuable socially than a degree, which is why the Government of India under Prime Minister from day one has made this free. So in a sense, we have encouraged people to take on certification and skilling without having to cross the hurdle of convincing themselves about the economic utility or the economic benefit or the returns for any investment they make in skilling. So point number one. Point number two, the big difference that we have now brought in post-COVID is that the skills that we offer are all designed, developed, and linked to industry needs. So the industry partnership in skilling is become, excuse me, a lot more deeper. In the past, the industry partnership was Mr. X company, broadly, what are your views on what skill requirements? So they have a sort of a non-binding, casual conversation. I need 4 engineers, I need 10 supervisors, and I need 8 mechanics. And that casual conversation then becomes part of a plan, and then that becomes an expensive skilling proposition. Now it is less casual, and there is a lot more design that goes into what we call the district skill development plan. So there are 741 skill development plans, district skill development plans, and that is broken up into 3 buckets, if you use that phrase. One is local economy linked. So local farm economy linked skills, local non-farm economy linked skills. Second is local industry linked skills. And the third is more migratory skills. So therefore, if you want to go, if you're in Nagpur and you're looking for a job, or you're interested in a job in Delhi or Noida, those type of skills. Now we've added a 4th layer, and the Honorable Prime Minister graciously has announced it in the budget, which is this demand, addressing the demand for cross-border skills. So 30 Skill India International Centers are being set up to prepare young Indians with the skills required by, let us say, Europe, Japan. I was in Kerala yesterday and I met a Skill India center that has sent 1,600 Malayali youth, Kerala youth, to Japan. And the conventional wisdom would be that you've gone, send them to Mitsubishi or Sony or some of the tech companies. But no, they've gone to agriculture farms, they've gone to hatcheries, And they've gone to many, many areas that are absolutely not obvious and not part of the normal narrative when we talk about skills and jobs. So that is broadly the architecture that we're implementing. And frankly, 6,000 crores the Prime Minister has given in the budget is a 3-year budget. So we hope we will take it far and it will touch a large number of young Indians.
I'm terribly sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but we have to, because of time constraints, end this very lovely and informative session with the Honourable Minister.
Thank you.
Kindly give him a big hand, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you
very much
for all the wonderful questions. With fairly dramatic economic and social changes are creating conditions for the emergence of new virtual forms of money and credit. So what lies ahead? Really, what does lie ahead? Let's listen from Rosie Rios, 43rd Treasurer of the United States, CEO, Red River Associates, board member Ripple, who's going to gaze into a crystal ball and tell us what she sees is the future of money. A warm welcome to Rosie, please.
Thank you so much. Great to be back again. I spoke yesterday, for those of you who heard me speak, about the global economic recovery and a comparative analysis between the financial crisis of 2008 to what we're going through today. But I'd like to speak about one of my favorite topics, which is money. So as Treasurer of the United States, from 2009 through 2016 under the Obama administration, I actually led the Future of Money initiative on behalf of the administration. And together we worked very closely with the Federal Reserve, which is our central bank. And our central bank determines monetary policy. Obviously, Treasury was fiscal policy. But I also oversaw all currency and coin production for the U.S. government. I had 4,000 very proud manufacturing employees producing both currency and coin. And together we had to come up with a way to predict and think about supply and demand. And one of the data points that we used in this process was working very closely on consumer behavior. Now, if you looked at, if you heard me speak yesterday, you heard me say that consumer behavior is the hardest to change unless there's a shock to the system. So I'm going to share some findings, some recent findings that I think will help us really think about what the future of money looks like. And just a little bit of background. So yes, that is me up there with the chair of the Federal Reserve at the time, Ben Bernanke, and my boss, Secretary Tim Geithner. And this is when we were unveiling the new $100 bill in 2013. So if you look at your U.S. currency, you can look on the slide. That is my name on the lower left-hand side of U.S. currency. I am currently on about $1.8 trillion of U.S. currency in circulation worldwide out of the $2.2 trillion. So no one makes more money than I do. So that is true. That is absolutely true. I'm going to say that again. So I had the pleasure of being one of the longest-serving senior Treasury officials in the Obama administration, and most recently also on the Treasury transition team for President Biden, working closely with the previous administration to make sure that, that President Biden was well prepared in the areas of fiscal policy when he took office in January of 2021. So, excuse me. Okay, I had trouble with this yesterday. Hopefully we'll get this going. There it is. Okay. So one of the things that we use in the administration is something called the Diary of Consumer Payment Choice that is conducted by the Federal Reserve every year. This has been in place since 2016. And this really gives us a really good flavor of consumer behavior. And I hope you pay attention to this, although this is very U.S.-centric. I think it does paint an interesting picture of the future of money in general. So the diary collects data about shopping and payments behavior from a unique, nationally represented survey of customers. This universe of household comprises approximately 9,000 respondents, so it is statistically significant, across the United States, about which half completed the diary, and this is for 2021, which is the most recent information. But what you will notice is that this was also during the pandemic. So very interesting information. I am one of those people that live and breathe by this diary. I read it cover to cover, and it is fascinating and a very long study. So I'm going to take just the snippets of what I think is relevant to this discussion about consumer behavior. So overall, the results showed that a substantial portion of the population, believe it or not, continue to use cash to make everyday purchases and to hold cash as a store of value. Now, I remember in 2011, 2012, when everyone thought that Google Wallet was going to take over the earth. Everyone thought, and actually I got the direction at that time to wind down production of coin and currency, and I didn't believe it. I didn't believe it because, again, consumer behavior is hard to change. I also didn't believe it because coin and cash usage actually follows the path of GDP growth. That has been the historic trend from day one. So as we were predicting at that time 3 to 4% of GDP growth, why wouldn't we predict that coin and currency usage was also going to grow? Well, I was correct. Now, when I started, there was about $835 billion of U.S. currency in circulation. When I left, there was almost $2 trillion of U.S. currency in circulation, so it basically doubled. Now, some might say that's store of value, and that is true. There was a big part of it that was store of value, but you look at coins. At the time that I started, we were producing 3 billion coins a year in 2009. Any guesses on what it was when I left in 2016? And by the way, these numbers aren't my numbers. These are the numbers that come from banks who produce the orders that come to us. So remember, I started at $3 billion in 2009. What was it when I left? Any guesses? In 2016? Raise your hand if you have a guess. 16 billion. And it still continues to this day. So, again, consumer behavior, very hard to change unless there's a shock to the system. So what this shows, this particular slide shows, is that consumers continue to use credit cards and debit cards for a majority of their payments. That's not news, accounting for 57% of total payments in 2021. So the decrease in the share of cash used during the pandemic is a result of the following factors. Again, the pandemic was very, very clearly impacting consumer behavior in this case. One, consumers shop less in person, resulting in a lower share of in-person payments overall and fewer opportunities to use cash in 2020 and 2021 compared to 2019. I think that's pretty obvious. Fewer consumers reported a preference for using cash when making payments in person. Again, the pandemic just caused a whole other relationship with how we physically had with cash and currency, right? Again, remote payments, online payments were definitely more of the issue there. Excuse me, these, there it is, okay. Another slide here, the percentage of purchases and person-to-person payments made in person versus online or remote. What this shows is remote and online purchases of prepared foods and groceries were a factor in this change shopping behavior in 2020. One of the largest shifts in shopping behavior was a decrease in the number of in-person payments at fast food and coffee shops, sit-down restaurants, bars, and grocery and convenience stores. Again, that's pretty obvious what the pandemic did to change this consumer behavior. What this slide shows is that person-to-person behavior, again, very much impacted where approximately 1.5 payments over the last 3 years, consumer reduced the share of cash payments and increased their use of mobile phones. Mobile apps really took hold, especially during the pandemic. That's what this slide shows. I'm seeing my time go very, very quickly here. My apologies. So one of the things that this shows, the share of payments used for in-person payments. Consumer reduced their share of cash use across all ages by a statistically significant amount compared to 2019. Consumers younger than 45 used cash for less than 20% of their payments. Older consumers, like me, used cash for more than 20%. I still rely on cash. I still think it's safe, it's liquid, it's accessible, it's used everywhere. And for a lot of people, especially during the downturn, during the this economic recovery, people use cash also to budget their expenses. So again, for people like me who are kind of used to cash, it would definitely came in handy for those who continued to want to use cash for those purposes. Now this is interesting. This share of adults holding on-person cash at least 1 day. The share of consumers holding on to cash has remained consistent since 2018, with 8 in 10 adults holding cash at least once during the diary. This consistency suggests that most adults prefer to have some cash on hand, both in normal years and in unusual years. Average store value, again, another interesting statistic here. In contrast to the average value of on-person holdings, the average value of cash held in one store value holdings continued its increase in October of 2021, reaching $347. As the slide shows, consumers' average store value holdings have increased more rapidly since 2018, with increases of 22% in 2019, 24% in 2020, and 20% in 2021. This significant increase in the average value held since 2019 shows again that aggregate demand for U.S. currency increased during times of uncertainty. February of last year, and the purpose of this executive order, excuse me, it was March of last year, the purpose of this executive order was to encourage regulators to ensure sufficient oversight, encourage the Financial Stability Oversight Council to identify and mitigate financial risks, directs and coordinated action across agencies to mitigate illicit financing, promote safe and affordable financial services, and explore, yes, a U.S. central bank digital currency. Now, you may know that over 80% of developed countries right now are looking at a central bank digital currency. It will happen, and it will happen in the U.S., but it is absolutely going to take some time. As you know, things don't happen very, very quickly, especially when it comes to the central bank. Now, they are taking this very, very seriously. The U.S. currency is a world reserve currency, so it is important for them to get this right. But I guess my point to that would be I wouldn't hold your breath anytime soon. It is going to take a considerable amount of time because it is a world reserve currency. It's accepted everywhere before the Federal Reserve actually decides to back a central bank digital currency. It absolutely will take some time. So over the past year, the agencies across the government have worked together to develop frameworks and policy recommendations that advance the 6 priorities identified in that executive order. To date, there have been 9 reports that have been submitted. They're all online. They are all available for public consumption. But I would say most recently, in the fall of 2022, Treasury published a series of reports in response to President Biden's executive order. The Financial Stability Oversight Council, which the Secretary of the Treasury chairs, published a report just this last October that examined the potential financial stability implications of crypto asset activities. As you know, crypto has been in the news time and time again, and I just want to share that I am on the board of Ripple. Ripple is XRP. And so when people ask me the question, why did you join the board of Ripple? I joined the board of Ripple because XRP serves a purpose. It's a function that facilitates cross-border payments. It's not some store of value, kind of arbitrary value that is not pegged to anything. This is actually what legitimate financial institutions use, specifically for cross-border payments. So instead of days and dollars, it's seconds and cents. And that is the future, in my opinion. And again, this is a function. So this utility piece, when it comes to crypto, is very, very important. Again, there's no doubt in my mind that digital assets are becoming mainstream. Absolutely no doubt. And for me, it is that underlying technology that's important. It is blockchain. So, of course, we all know what blockchain is. And blockchain is not going away anytime soon. In my opinion, it absolutely is the future of commerce. Whether it is real estate, whether it is art, whether it is NFTs, It is absolutely here to stay. And so it's very, very important for the administration to get this right. It will take some time. And obviously what we experienced with FTX is just the beginning. Unfortunately, the FTX debacle really put the antenna up, the radar up on what to expect in the future. And I think there's going to be a lot more caution. And look, you know, we shouldn't let one person in what has been considered kind of an unregulated industry take the fall for everyone. This is, you know, in every industry, whether you're regulated or not, there will always be bad actors. But unfortunately, in this case, because crypto is still very nascent, it will absolutely kind of pause a lot more in terms of how to approach this the right way. As you heard the minister say, there's no doubt in my mind that innovation should not be stymied by regulation. Absolutely not. But there is a way that, in my opinion, that regulators can work hand in hand with the private sector. It has to happen early. It has to happen very, very early. If you heard me speak this morning at the Leadership Council, I talked about how important it is for the conversations to happen early and often, and they have to sustain themselves. And so, you know, for me, I stayed in the administration as long as I did, for 8 years, because I wanted to make sure that those conversations as a senior government official start and continue through. And that's very important in any administration, is to have that stability and that consistency. And that's what I think it's going to take for the crypto market, and in this case, you know, digital assets in general, to really take hold. But I do think there is a path forward. I do think there is a path forward, and I do think it is going to take, again, a lot of patience with the private sector, but I also think it's going to take a lot of interaction with the private sector. And again, from my perspective, that utility is going to be the key, not just about perceived value that's going to be up and down based on some arbitrary floating values. Utility is going to be a big part of this. And I do think, again, because a lot of this innovation is generating the jobs that it's going to take for this recovery to be on track, that the administration needs to continue to invest in this, not pull back, but invest further, invest the time and care that's going to take for the right regulations, the right bills to be introduced, and again, how these assets can be utilized to benefit all of Main Street, not just the investors, but the users themselves. And I still will continue to play a very pivotal role in this. I am absolutely engaged, again, not just on the private sector side, but on the policy side. And it is my commitment moving forward, because in my opinion, money does make the world go round, but this is really more about jobs, this is more about utility, and this is more about the future of commerce and how we think about using technology in a responsible way. Thank you.
Thought that the day will come when such a lot of energy can be stored in an object which is perhaps the size of my finger or even smaller. Batteries. Batteries, ladies and gentlemen, have become an integral part of our lives, without which we probably would have a show here this afternoon. Solar panels are emerging as the biggest change agents in mainstream storage energy. The automotive industry is shifting towards electric vehicles, EVs, even faster than was imagined about a year ago. With steady support from the government and leading automakers, the global market share of electric cars, SUVs, and other light vehicles has grown continually and from strength to strength. To tell us about the role of battery-based energy storage in helping India achieve sustainability and growth objectives, please welcome Julian Nebreda, President and CEO Fluence, a Siemens and AES company. Welcome, Julian.
Thank you, and thanks Economic Times for the invitation. It's great to be here. My first time in India. Very, very nice. People have been treating me great. The food is great. People are wonderful. But something that really has impressed me is the optimism of this meeting, the level of enthusiasm, the conviction that everybody has on the future of India. And really, really something that it's contagious. It's like COVID. You get it without realizing it. So even last night when I was, going to bed, I said, why do I feel so happy? You know what? Clearly people have been very, very nice with me. It's really that. I mean, it makes you feel that the world is really going to be better. So I'm going to talk about that world that's going to be better. First, quickly, just very, very quickly, what fluency is. Just very quickly, my 2 cents add. So we're a company that develops solutions for the power sector using batteries, using batteries. So that's good enough. We were formed by AES and Siemens. We were the pioneers in this technology, and we're now, having a leadership role in moving this technology forward. So just to give you a sense. What do I intend to do today here? I would like to convince you of 2 things, so see whether I'm successful or not at the end of my 15 minutes. First one, batteries will play a role supporting India's renewable ambitions. That's first one. Second one, this is a great opportunity for India, not only to meet its renewable ambitions, it's also a great opportunity to take a leadership role, a leader role in the supply chains and product development that this industry is developing. There is a great opportunity, not only to accelerate the renewable sector, but also to bring in the supply chains that support this industry and the talent and imagination that we need to develop the products that we need for this. So those are my 2 objectives. So first thing I want to talk, clearly we're all, generally all, or most of the people are convinced on the need of fighting climate change. It's clearly the responsibility of our generation. It's something we need to do, and we need to do it in a way that we do not leave those 2 billion people that do not have electricity today or do not have reliable electricity today. We need to do this in a way that we address them, that we help them. So this is a huge challenge for us. And we in Influence are overtaking that challenge at the core of what we do. At the core of what we do. And I'll talk to you a little bit, how do we see it and how do I see our role in India supporting this. So the first thing is clear when you looked at how to decarbonize the economy, is that the electricity sector will play an essential role in that. If you looked at the BNF report, they believe that 75% of the reduction in emissions that the world will need to come from the electricity sector. First, by changing the generation mix of the electricity sector, by bringing renewable electricity to support and decarbonizing the sector. But not only that, taking this technology, taking the electricity to other sectors. We have seen it in the EV, moving electricity, moving into the transportation sector. But we need to go to cement, to steel, to housing, everywhere. We need to, in order to fight climate change, in order to decarbonize our economy, and do it in a way that does not affect the well-being, our economic well-being, electricity will play an essential role. Some other people think it's not 75, that it's 60, 55, whatever number you is, but there's no way of reaching a decarbonized economy without electricity. And that's where battery storage or the technology battery comes into play. Batteries are essential in order to integrate renewables into the electricity sector. There's no way, or it's a lot more costly to do it without batteries. So what do the batteries do? They support renewables by providing renewables something that they like. Renewables are not reliable. What do we mean by they're not reliable? They depend on whether you have sun or wind or whatever basic technology you have. So their production moves during the day. There's a cloud moving around, wind comes down for any reason. So that reliability, the electricity sector is designed, that's something that the electricity sector doesn't like. The power sectors require reliable energy. And that's where batteries come into play. They come into play so they can assure the renewable energy, ensure that to make it reliable, to ensure that it will be there no matter what happens. So you charge your batteries when there's plenty of sun, plenty of wind, and you discharge it whenever wind or the sun is not out. And you do this every day. So that's the first role, It gives electricity sector reliability. But that's not the end of it. Batteries do a lot more stuff. They support the whole value chain of the power sector. They will support generation, like I was talking about, but they will support transmission. Transmission is one of the biggest, the Prime Minister talked about it yesterday, one of the biggest challenges we have today, not only in India, all around the world. A huge challenge. In order to, we now need to bring all that electricity that we're being produced with renewable sources in places where before we didn't have generation, and we need to bring it to the centers of consumption. Batteries can support transmission efforts, ensuring that you can use these systems with high security, but much more efficiently. They can also support distribution. They can also support your consumption in your house. So they support the whole value chain, from the top to the final consumption in the house. And they do it in a way that is efficient. And so that's a concept for batteries as a whole. What about India? So India has set itself, clearly has been very, very successful integrating renewables into its power grid. Incredible the work they have done, but there's a lot more to be done. The country has set for itself a goal of not importing any energy, of being self-reliable on energy. And that this will require significant amount of investments in renewable energy. Thank God this is a huge country with a subcontinent with significant renewable resources. And why will batteries help in India? Well, clearly, as I said, it will help disintegration. But, what does batteries bring into the integration that makes it more efficient? First, they're flexible. This is very, very important when you think about the solutions. Batteries work from 10 megawatts to gigas. They work the same, whether you make a small project or you make it huge. So they have a flexibility, scalability that is incredible. That's very, very important. Not all the solutions that you have for the electricity sector have that capacity. They have an optimal size. These ones, no, they can work whatever size. They work the same. They can provide you the same quality of service. They can be placed anywhere, so you can put them where you need them. They are not set by geographical or conditions. You can decide where you need. They don't take a lot of space. Batteries do not emit any gases. They do not need water. They don't need no emissions of any sort. So they can be placed in the middle of a city. They can be placed next to consumption, next to transmission, next to generation. That flexibility, that ability to adapt makes it the perfect technology to integrate integrate renewables and to integrate into the power sector. But more important, as important as this is a technology that today it's mature, generally, it's on prime time, but it's a technology that still has a lot more to offer. With the combination of battery solutions and digital integration, you can have these batteries do whatever you need. So today, we in Influence, we have batteries that behave as if they were power plants. They provide the same services that a power plant will do. They can provide you black start. People who are here, electrical engineers, will know one of the most difficult starts is how to start a system when electricity is out. Batteries can help you do that. They can manage frequency. They can manage inertia. They can manage transmissions. So and this is just the beginning of what this technology is going to do. That's why I said, remember when I talked about it, there are a lot more products that we have not thought of, that we need to think about. There are a lot more needs. There are clearly more things. We started working on batteries years ago, and we were doing one job. One job. That's the only thing we do. We charge the batteries when electricity was cheap, and we discharge them when electricity was expensive, essentially. Today, we have batteries that respond in milliseconds, 150 milliseconds, faster than any generation capacity. There's no other machine that can work that way, with that speed. We have batteries that manage inertia, that essentially copy a big gas plant, you know? So, and this is just the beginning. So there is a great opportunity as India embarks on this tremendous, self-reliant objective, in this tremendous and ambitious objective of ensuring that you don't need to import energy from the outside. Batteries can play and can come up with the need, and more needs are going to come. Today, these things over time, or in the next 10, 20 years that we'll have to do this, you will see batteries play more and more of a role here. And I think that when you looked at it, here the last couple of days, it is clear that at least the regulator and some of the actors recognize this. And you looked at the numbers of what people think by 2030, there will be this market will be around $10 billion. So a fairly big market. And everybody that looks at the market and is doing the planning for the power sector believes that batteries will play a role. I will tell you something that I have learned by working in batteries for many years, is that these numbers are going to be wrong. These numbers are going to be wrong, and they're going to be wrong by a factor of probably 3 or 4. So whatever we think this is going to do, 10 years from now, when hopefully I'll be here, you invite me over, and again I can come up and I tell you, hey, remember what I told you when I was here 5 years ago, what was going to happen? You will say, this is 10 times what you, 3 times or 4 times what you told me. Why? Because this technology is going through 2 changes. One, it's getting cheaper. So it's getting more and more economically attractive. Every day. Even today, in the middle of this inflation world, it's getting cheaper. It's getting cheaper for a combination of 2 things. It is using the economies of scales of EVs, so it provides that, and digital technology is integrating, making these batteries every day. You can ensure that they will last longer, do more stuff, so even though they cost the same, they provide a lot more value. So I'll tell you, it will be significantly more. But it is clear that batteries, there's a role for batteries in the power sector. There is a role for batteries in the supply chain, or for India in the supply chain of batteries, sorry. A great opportunity. Today, this technology is essentially controlled by China. Essentially. When you looked at it, most of the production comes out of China. In the world we're in, as these economies are growing, there are more and more countries looking to diversify from China. China will be a major player here. I'm not discounting it. But there is a need to diversify and to create new sources of technology. Remember, I told you, this technology is mature, but it's not settled. There's a lot more to do. There is a great opportunity for India to fill that space. You have the engineers, the capacity, the lithium. I read somewhere that the biggest lithium reserve was found in the northwest of India. So you have the resources. It's a great opportunity. But not only on the supply chain of the equipment, on the product side. On the product side, there is a great opportunity to bring the engineering and the intelligence and the data scientists and the knowledge that the Indian people have about how to manage this type of projects to develop the products and the ideas and the innovation that we need for this technology going forward. There's a huge opportunity there, not only to bring and control and to take a leadership role in that supply chain, there's a great opportunity in developing the products that you need. And I'll tell you, I will end with this. You cannot ask other people to do what, you need to do yourself first. So we are working on those 3 elements. First, we're working very, very hard to serve the Indian market. We form a joint venture with Renew Power, a local renewable company, and we're serving, and any of you who want, we are actively looking and selling these solutions to help, and to support the integration of renewables. So first, we're very actively on that. We're very actively in localizing our technology here. We're committed to have everything but the batteries localized in India by the end of 2024. So everything but the batteries. The batteries, unfortunately, we won't be able to localize until we get, a local manufacturer, and that will take some time. But we will localize the whole system, the telecommunications, the fire suppression, the whole system will be localized here to ensure that we'll have an Indian product to serve the Indian market and the world. Why we do this? Because we believe there's an opportunity, and these are things that today we buy mostly in China, or essentially in China, that we believe that we can serve the rest of the world from here. But not only that, so we're looking to serve the market, we're looking to localize our technology here and work with the supply chain so we can create that value here. We're bringing in our product development capabilities to India. It's something that we started a couple of years ago, but we are expanding it today. We have an office in Bangalore. We have, a big number of people for our company or size, but not a huge number for some of the numbers of employees that people have. But we have brought in, we are developing here some of our products today. And some of our most important products, we are using Indian talent to help us develop them. Even though they represent roughly, our Indian talent, 10 to 15% of the company, they are working in the nerve, in the center of what we are as a company. So we're not asking the rest of the world or anybody else to do what we're not doing ourselves. We're committed to serving this market. We're committed to localizing our technology here, and we're committed to develop and work with local talent to ensure that we can come up with the new products and new ideas that will serve and make the world a much better place for all of us. Thank you very much, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you. The global economy is in the midst of one of the most international synchronous episodes. In this period of uncertainty, India stands out as a guiding light. It is the Indian consumer that is turning out to be the strongest edifice of the global turnaround story. Let's hear it from Kurt Marvis, CEO and co-founder QU Media Inc. India's World. Why the world bets on India. Give him a big hand, a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Times Group, for inviting me here. I think after hearing what the Minister of Technology was saying a few speakers ago, I could probably just stand up here and say ditto and step off, and we make this a lot shorter. Certainly a lot of what he was commenting on, purely from a technology perspective, is what we've built our company around and what we're trying to do here in India. But what I'd like to focus on really is what we're seeing happening at the consumer level. When you're coming up as sort of one of the later speakers in a day-and-a-half program like this, most of the stats and data that one can possibly imagine about the growth of India and what's happening in this country has probably largely already been covered. Nevertheless, it's staggering when you look at some of the statistics, and they bear repeating to kind of get a grasp on what's happening in this country. Again, India is earmarked by 2027 to be the third largest economy in the world. And just recently, I'm sure everybody in this room saw the news that India had become the most populous country in the world. And these are data sets that are irrefutable, that cannot be denied, and are supported by a lot of the activities you've been hearing about over the course of the last day and a half, but are also supported by things like the recent news of Apple moving a huge amount, almost 25% of its smartphone manufacturing business to India. This is a huge win for India, but it's representative from my point of view of the change that's happening in this country right now and the dominance that it's beginning to create from a manufacturing and from an economic point of view. Same thing happened recently with Samsung. Most of their cell phone manufacturing that was happening in the country of Vietnam has also been moved to India. So India is beginning not only just from a size and scale point of view, but from a skilled worker point of view and a technological prowess point of view, to beginning to move up further and further in terms of other countries and other companies that are global companies recognizing the capabilities that are possible here. Tata, where from the sort of other side of the world, where I live, Tata's mainly known for being a place that's actually farming out workers to other companies. So it's much more recognized outside of India as a global company that's using its capabilities to allow a lower cost workforce to be able to execute all sorts of different things. I read recently that Tata had made a commitment to what they're calling India's next decade, to a $90 billion investment into their business here in India. Again, another milestone, another piece of evidence that India is moving in the right direction. When you look at India, there was a slide, I can't remember if it was this morning or yesterday, that was talking about the India middle class and the size of the middle class and the growth that was happening there and what a big piece India was playing in that. When you look at statistics that show that there's going to be a doubling of the consumer economy in India over the next decade, again, it's another point of evidence that shows that the path is moving towards this country. For us, the real driver of this is the age group and the youth. It's interesting in this room, I was looking around, and even right now, I don't see too many faces in here that I think are 30 or 25 years of age or younger. And what's interesting is I would make the argument that that's the group of people, probably when they hold this next, they should hold one that's just for people 30 and under, because those are the people that are actually going to make the change happen. Everyone here is going to light the fuse. They're going to start the momentum, the government, the people that are in this room that run large corporations here. But the population of India, where almost 700 million people are now thought to be 25 years of age and younger, is extraordinary. There's no other country in the world that has this kind of makeup, and it represents almost a third of the youth population of the world just in this country. That mere fact alone is going to drive incredible change that's going to happen in this country, and it's going to be driven by the technological underpinnings that were being spoken about a half hour ago in terms of what's happening there. So it's not only creating this massive new workforce that's entering the Indian landscape, but it's also creating a whole new group of consumers. And those consumers are kids that are going to be digital natives. These will be people that grew up in an era where the cell phone, where the connected TV, where the computer, where the internet were all second nature to the way that they were raised. And trust me, anybody in this room who has teenage kids knows the amount of time that they're spending on their mobile phones engaged in social platforms now. That's only going to increase, and it's only going to happen that the old brick and mortar retail world that we all lived in and grew up in is going to change dramatically, not only in terms of the content that's being consumed, but around these social apps and the way these social apps are affecting the entire way that the commerce of the economy is going to be working. This is creating what's becoming known as the digital consumer. Interestingly enough, this little piece of art, when we were putting this presentation together, was put together in, I think, 20 seconds by a ChatGPT-esque art app. I don't even know the name of it, so I can't plug it. So the point of it is that we just talked about what we were looking for India's new digital consumer, and this was the image that was immediately drawn around that. What's happening is that every imaginable segment of the Indian life, and this is all over the world, obviously, but the reason it's so impactful in this country going forward is because of the age groups. Whether it's education, e-commerce, fintech, social media, you name it, every aspect of the day-to-day lives of young Indians is affected today and will continue to be affected more profoundly as we move forward. The unicorns that have been spoken about and sprouted up in India over the last several years, while they may have been, massively valued at that point and come back to earth a little bit, I think it would be mistaken for anyone to think that any of those businesses, whoever you might be thinking of, actually have a business model that's inappropriate or doesn't fit for the India economy. The entire world is moving digitally, and India is moving there as fast as anyone because of the number of people that they have that are using these devices. Before TikTok they got into the fracas with the government and was banned here, the most important territory in the world for TikTok at that point was India. It eclipsed the United States in terms of the focus that they had on the Indian economy, because the growth rate that was happening around that app that's now spawned MX Talk and Josh and Shingari and all these other TikTok-style apps, which was launched and started by TikTok, made India the #1 focus territory for the Chinese, for ByteDance, the Chinese-owned company that was attempting to do that. It's because there are 650 million cell phone users in this country today. Again, when you live here, you get used to these kinds of numbers, and they're not as astonishing as they may seem to someone who comes from outside of India. But there are currently 1.2 billion cell phone users in this country, and the prediction is that by 2026 there will be 1 billion smartphone users. It's a staggering number to think about in terms of the number of devices that are in the hands of people that they're carrying around with them 24 hours a day. And so what's going to happen is that this is all going to create further consolidation of the need to be able to be involved in the social space and the framework of having businesses operate within the context of what's happening in mobile devices and in a connected world. So what do these consumers look like? Well, the first thing is that they're all over social media. Okay, they live and breathe social platforms like Instagram, like Snapchat, like all the different variations of TikTok that exist now in India. They're also completely comfortable with the digital world and the digital economy. Some of us here, including myself, still fumble with things on our smartphones or computers. For these kids, it's second nature. It's like taking a breath of air. And so what's going to happen is that every person in here that runs a business, I don't care whether it's a farming business, a manufacturing business, a retail business, a restaurant business, an entertainment business, all of you will have to continue to adapt to how is my product service delivered over a connected environment in the digital economy. This will become absolutely crucial going forward, and it's India's true opportunity to become the leading country in the world around this. China, we all know there's so many issues that exist there, and from governmental regulatory issues, so much so that YouTube doesn't even exist to this day in China. But India is a country that, because there's a rule of law, because there's the ability to do business in English, because of all these other aspects that exist in India that do not exist in China, from my point of view, there's an extraordinary opportunity in this country over the next several decades as this technology is beginning to infiltrate, as these devices are into the hands of all of these young Indian consumers to be able to do this. Now, there's challenges that are involved in this too. Instant capability means everything that you've all heard, I'm sure, of cancel culture. You know, it's very, very fast for something to be done the wrong way and for you immediately to be jumped on as a brand or as a product by the kids that are dialed into what's happening. So a lot of companies, from my perspective, are not paying strong enough attention to what's actually operating, maybe even hiring people that understand the social economy and social media and how your brand is presented there. Because the kids who are growing up as digital natives will know instantaneously how they want to respond and react to your brand, what they want to see. Is it something that they believe is authentic? Is it trustworthy? And if it's not, how quickly they're going to spread the word that this is not something that they think you should use. So whether you're a business leader or whether you're a politician, whether you're leading a traditional company or a digital company, I think it's imperative that you take your business and you look at it and say, how am I going to treat this when 1 billion people in 2026 are going to be able to access, purchase, and interact with everything that I do in my business from their cell phone? It's a very, very important fact going forward. As I mentioned, huge advantage here in India. China, post-COVID, during COVID, had a huge slowdown on foreign direct investment into the country. I think there's, obviously you're all aware there's problems now between the U.S. and China. So there's a lot that's happening politically at the moment that I think is going to drive investor caution in terms of what's taking place in China? Well, there's still a lot of dry powder money that's out there. It has to be invested somewhere. India seems like a perfect place from my perspective to be able to drive those dollars. Same thing has happened, as I mentioned, with the manufacturing side of things. There's a ton of manufacturing that's moving into the Indian environment. That's going to create more skilled workers. That's going to create more proof of concept to be able to show that these products can be manufactured here. And that's another big wave that I think over the next 2 decades you'll see significant movement on. Obviously and unfortunately, the Russian and Ukrainian war has taken a lot of investment capital that would be pouring into those countries. That stopped completely at this time. There's no telling when that will come back. And Brazil has had a lot of political unrest recently. So there's a very, very big opportunity right now in India. I'm not saying this just because I'm here myself in India and because I was invited here. There's an unbelievable opportunity in this country, from my perspective, over the next 2 decades to be able to build things here. Finally, the devices that are also entering the marketplace. I spoke about the 1 billion smartphones, but look at this, 7.3 hours a day spent by the average Indian on their smartphone. When there's 1 billion of these phones and the time being used probably goes up to 8 or 9 or maybe 10 hours a day. By the way, I'm not suggesting this is a good thing for the planet Earth necessarily, but the amount of importance of dealing with these platforms as something for your business is incredible. YouTube, the largest territory for YouTube usage in the world is India. 467 million people here use YouTube. More than the United States, the UK, and Brazil combined. 10% of all YouTube viewership happens right here in India on a daily basis. These are extraordinary numbers. So when you look at this, 28 billion apps downloaded in 2022. Imagine how that goes up when you add another 350 million smartphones to the country. So these are statistics that are going to drive dramatically what happens here. This is a slide I guarantee you guys haven't seen yet today. This is a drawing that was done by Walt Disney over 65 years ago in 1956 for his vision of what was happening, how he was going to build the Disney empire. You can Google it. It's online. And it's extraordinary. It really is extraordinary. I would suggest you all take a look at it. But Disney was a movie studio then, and they had a movie studio, but this was in the 50s in America. America was the baby boomers. Everything was happening in America. The whole country was growing. And so he said, I'm going to build theme parks. I'm going to start television channels. I'm going to have books and music and movies. And he saw what the opportunity was around the brand and what could be done serving the consumption that was there and the thirst for consuming those sorts of things from the American audience. This is our roadmap. I was always inspired by the Disney drawing for years and years now. The center of our universe, QU Media, the name comes from we were going to queue up the best of YouTube or curate the best of YouTube. That's when we started the idea in 2014 because YouTube was the dominant platform there for short-form video. That was before TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram showing videos, etc. The center of our universe are the creators and digital content stars of these platforms. We're big believers that what you're going to see happen over the next several decades is the people that you see on Instagram, the people that you see on these TikTok-style apps, the people that you see on Snapchat, they'll become as important as any Bollywood star. And so we're building a business that's surrounding those digital content creators and those digital stars as a center of our media business that we're building here in India. I've been buzzed twice now, so I better get off the stage, so thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
To the next normal. And to guide us through these nuances, it is my privilege to invite once again Nouriel Roubini, CEO Roubini Macro Associates, LLC, Professor Emeritus, 2021 to present, Stern School of Business, New York University, in conversation with Ajaya Sharma, Senior Editor Markets, Anchor at Times Network, on trends in the new normal. Give them a big hand, ladies and gentlemen.
and markets and industry. And, till a couple of years back, macroeconomics is something which people did not pay much attention to. But in the last couple of years, macroeconomics has started impacting all our daily lives along with our, the entire investing ecosystem like never before. So you are the authority in global macroeconomics. It will be very good to know your thoughts. And the topic of today's discussion is the new normal. So before we come to new normal, I'd like to understand from you, how has the global market, all asset classes, got disrupted post-COVID, the war? What are the factors because of which the big disruption has happened?
Well, I think it's, of course, a very important question. I think that rather than in a new normal, I feel we're living in a new abnormal, because things that were normal before are not normal anymore. When COVID hit, of course, there was a sudden panic, and there was a crash of US and global equity that lasted for a few weeks until US, Europe, and many other countries did massive amounts of monetary, fiscal, and credit easing. But then what happened was that there was a rally in financial markets because there was a reopening of the economy and this massive monetary, fiscal, and credit stimulus. But we kept loose monetary, fiscal, and credit policy too much for too long. And we created initially asset inflation, and then we created goods inflation. And it was a bit of a everything bubble where, since policy rates were either zero or negative, long-term interest rates went back to zero, if not negative. You had literally $18 trillion equivalent of public debt between Europe and Japan that had a negative nominal yield up to maturity of 10 years. In some Scandinavian countries, even mortgages had a negative nominal yield. Mm-hmm. So public equities, US and global, went through the roof. Private equity valuations went through the roof. Of course, anything that was a tech stock, growth stock, VC, even firms that had a very flimsy business model had a boom, because with zero policy rates, long duration assets get a rally. And then you had a bunch of speculative bubbles in assets that were worth nothing. You had a SPACs bubble, you had a crypto bubble, you had a meme stock bubble. Bond yields were low, credit spreads were low, in spite of high debt ratios. And the party, of course, went crashing last year because we had finally goods inflation that forced central banks to increase interest rates. And traditional investment advice is to try to balance your portfolio, 60-40, 60 equities and 40 safe bonds, or 70-30, or variants of it like Bridgewater's risk parity. They're just variants of the same thing. But the idea of doing 60 and 40 based on the view that historically there is a negative correlation between the price of bonds and the price of equities. When equities do well, like when there is risk on or economic growth, their price goes high, bond yields go higher, the price of bonds falls. So you make money on the equity leg and you lose money on the bond leg. When there is a risk of a recession, equity go down, but then bond yields fall and the price of bonds goes higher, so you make money on the 40%. But that assumes that inflation is low and stable. When, like last year, inflation starts to rise, equity do poorly because the discount factor for those equities and long-term interest rates is much higher. And long-duration assets like tech stocks or growth or VC do even more poorly because the long-duration assets are more sensitive to rising long-term interest rates. And that's why the Nasdaq last year fell 30%, while the S&P fell only 15%. But bonds actually do poorly as well, because bond yields going from less than 1% in US 10-year Treasury to 3.5% implied that the price of the bond fell 20%. So you lost more money on your, unquote, safe bonds than you lost money on the S&P 500. So last year, there was nowhere to hide. You lost money on public equities. You lost money on tech growth VC stocks. You lost money on private equity if you truly marketed to markets. You lost crashing 80-90% down for meme, crypto, and all the other speculative backbone like SPACs. You lost money on bonds. You lost money on credit because credit spreads widened. And of course, even cash gave you a negative real return because of inflation. So I think the lesson the investor have learned is that when inflation starts to rise, the negative correlation between bonds and equities become positive, but positive in the wrong direction, meaning both of them go south. And that's something that people have to start to wear and find investments that can provide you a hedge against inflation and the basement of fiat currency. They exist, but they're not the traditional ones.
Dr. Rubini, you make a point that in this new normal, in this change in macroeconomic environment, inflation is likely to remain higher for longer.
Yeah.
And interest rates also may be sticky and may not come down in a hurry. Yeah. And the growth is likely to remain anemic.
Yeah.
In this kind of an environment, many of the investors who are listening to you right now, what would your advice be for equities as an asset class, high growth equities or value investing? If the environment remains so for next few years, what kind of asset classes do you think would do well?
Well, if I'm right, actually, and you don't have to be apocalyptic, I'm not expecting hyperinflation in advanced economies. I'm not even expecting double-digit inflation. Let's assume that the average inflation rate, say, in advanced economy is not 2, but it's only 6%. And given all the factors that are on the demand and supply side, I think the new normal for inflation is going to be 6%. That doesn't seem like a lot, but if inflation is 6, then 10-year treasury yields have to be at least 8%, 6 for inflation and 2% real, because when inflation is high and volatile, the inflation risk premium has to be positive and high enough. Now, with 8% 10-year treasury yields, then high yield and high grade bonds that have a spread over treasuries have to be at least double digits. Mortgage rates have to be double digits. And of course, anything more risky than that is going to be high double digits and so on. Last year, when yields in the US went from less than 1% to 3.5%, bonds lost 20%. If they had to go from 3.5% to 8%, they would lose another 50%. And equities with a bond yield at 8% will have to be valued much less. In the 1980s, by 82, when we had high inflation and bond yields were much higher, the price-earning ratio for S&P 500 firms was 7. Today, is still 17. So in that scenario, even of a moderate inflation will be a bloodbath for equities, will be a bloodbath for bonds, there will be a bloodbath even for high-growing stocks like tech stocks, like it happened last year. Now, what's a hedge against inflation if you have to worry? You have to start to put your portfolio in your portfolio, assets that do well if inflation is higher. I would say, number one, I would put money into inflation index bonds that give you a higher return when inflation is higher. Two, if you go for short-term treasuries as opposed to long-duration treasuries, as inflation goes higher, the yield on, say, on a 1-month T-bill goes higher, but you don't have the price loss that you have on a 10-year. The price loss is much smaller, and the yield is much higher. So on fixed income, you have to be there. Two, I think that you have to be overweight in gold and some of the precious metals, not only because they're a good hedge against inflation and the basement of fiat currency, but we also live in a world where there are political and geopolitical risks. The political instability that might lead to people wanting to have safe assets like gold. And geopolitically, as the US is weaponizing the dollar, the strategic rivals of the US, whether it's China or Russia, Iran or Korea and others, will have to go into an asset that cannot be seized. Now, dollar can be seized, but also euro and yen and pound and Swiss franc can be seized, as we learned in Russia. So which is the only international store of value? Not a currency, it's a store of value that cannot be seized by, say, US or Europe if there is a geopolitical conflict, is gold. Of course, gold in the vault in Beijing or Moscow, not the gold in the vaults of the New York Fed or the Bank of England or somewhere in London. So I think that gold is a good hedge against inflation, against the basement of fiat currency, against political and geopolitical risk, against even financial crisis, because in a financial crisis, sometimes your money in the bank may not be safe. So you want to be overweight gold. You want to be overweight, by the way, some of the green metals, because in a world of a green transition where it's quite expensive to produce zinc, cobalt, and all sorts of green metals, the price of them is going to be higher. So you want to be there. And finally, among real assets, some forms of real estate. Real estate that is, how to say, resilient to climate change. You don't want to be having real estate commercial or inflation has plateaued, but it's not going to fall to 2%, and therefore stopping as soon as the RBI or the Fed or ECB were thinking until a couple of months ago is not going to be possible. The Fed will have to go towards 6% if they're serious about inflation. The ECB is going to have to go towards 4%. The RBI may have to do another 25 hikes, 2 or 3 of them, rather than stopping the way they stopped in February. So if that were to happen, then you'll have a further correction of valuations, and with a slowdown of the economy, and if I'm right that there is still a meaningful chance of a harder landing rather than a softer landing, the combination of a harder landing, higher policy rates is going to imply that the last 2 months where there was a market rally for equities, for credit, for bonds and so on, those positive sentiment might be dashed, and further correction of risky assets might occur this year. So that this year may look a little like last year, as opposed to be one in which asset prices are doing well this year.
A quick question on commodities. India is one of the largest users of imported commodity, and commodity price rise impacts our corporate balance sheets as well as our day-to-day lives because we use imported fuel. What are your thoughts on commodities in general, the pricing? In the next coming years in this kind of environment, which macro environment we are talking about?
Commodity prices spiked last year following the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Energy prices, both natural gas and oil, industrial metals, food, fertilizers, in part because of the impact of that war, but those commodity prices were already high even before. Brent was $100 per barrel because we have underinvested in fossil fuels. The production of renewable is rising, but not fast enough. And even with modest demand, commodity prices were high. Food prices were high because in many parts of the world, because of a global climate change, we have desertification, we have lack of water, we have droughts, and that was spiking, say, food prices even before the Russian invasion of Ukraine led to a shock to fertilizer prices and food prices. So if I'm looking at the structural factors, I think that there is a super cycle in commodity is going to continue. It's going to continue because, one, the geopolitical risks are all implying higher commodity prices. Unfortunately, this ugly Russian invasion of Ukraine is going to get nastier. It's going to be a more brutal war this year, and therefore that's an upside to energy and to industrial metal. Secondly, there's a meaningful chance, in my view, that this year Israel will have to strike Iran, because Iran is becoming a threshold nuclear state. If that were to happen, you'll have a shock to energy prices in the Gulf because there'll be disruption to supply. Three, if China is now going to grow 5% per year, as opposed to at least this year, as opposed to 2-3%, the demand for commodity is going to rise. That's going to fuel commodity prices. So you have all these factors. And there's been massive amounts of underinvestment into commodities. In fossil fuels, because we've been bashing, rightly so, big oil and saying shareholders, stakeholders, don't finance, don't invest into more fossil fuels. That's it. But even high prices of industrial metal and green metal have not led to massive new investments in them, in copper, in zinc, in cobalt, and you name it, because there are all sorts of regulatory restrictions to doing so. It takes years until you find the new mines, you make the investment, and finally you get the stuff out of the ground. So between the demand and the supply side, I think that this year you could have a spike in commodity prices. Goldman Sachs wrote a report at the beginning of the year saying that the entire commodity spectrum, not just energy, this year could go higher by 43%. That's huge, but even if it was only 30% or 25%, headline inflation will be higher, core inflation will be higher, and all commodity importers, whether in advanced economies or emerging markets, will have another terms of trade shock like the one they had last year. So that's one of the upside risks to inflation, downside risk to economic growth that increases the probability of a hard landing this year.
All right, Dr. Rubini, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on the global landscape right now and how your observation will help us to manage our portfolios and our strategy better. Thank you so much for your time today. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a big hand for Dr. Rubini.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time
Thank
today.
you.
August 15th, 2021, delivering the Independence Day speech, the Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi had announced the government's intent and plans to turn India into a global hub for green hydrogen. This was just the cue that India needed to be the world's hydrogen heart. Let's go straight in and explore the hydrogen economy, key for a green transformation, with Dr. Stefan Kaufmann, former Hydrogen Commissioner, German federal government, and advisor, ThyssenKrupp. Give him a big hand, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, good evening to all of you, and thank you very much for the invitation to speak at this very impressive global business summit. And talking about the hydrogen economy. And as you see, the hydrogen economy is a very global business. Ladies and gentlemen, Russia's invasion of Ukraine shows us, especially in Europe, but also globally, how urgent it is to move away from fossil fuels. We need to diversify our energy sources, establish reliable partnerships, and implement coordinated action on hydrogen, all as quickly as possible. Along with security of supply, we need to provide for a climate-neutral energy system. In Germany, our aim is to achieve full climate neutrality by 2045 in terms of how we do business and how we live. And that means in figures 750 million tons CO2 today to zero emissions in 22 years. This is a very, very ambitious goal. It means we are faced with the enormous task of delivering the radical transformation of our complex energy system. Simply cutting emissions and reducing dependencies is not enough. We must also make sure that energy prices remain competitive and guarantee security of supply at all times. The expansion of wind power and photovoltaics is the first step for the energy transition. However, not all processes are suited for electrification particularly in the energy-intensive sectors of primary industry or aviation. And not only that, we need to be able to store energy too. We heard about it. All of this makes green hydrogen a crucial piece in the puzzle. And when I see green hydrogen, I'm talking about climate-neutral hydrogen produced from renewable sources of energy. Hydrogen is key to achieving a climate-neutral industry. It plays a major part in sustainable mobility, and it enables the long-term storage of energy on a grand scale. Thus, hydrogen is the solution for many problems. It's therefore the German government's aim to use green hydrogen, support its rapid market scale-up, and establish the necessary value chains. And this is why the government of Germany adopted a national hydrogen strategy in 2020, and also Europe followed shortly after in July 2020. And under this strategy, we want to really take advantage of the many opportunities offered by green hydrogen for the sake of the climate and for Germany as a location for business, but also for the sustainable development of emerging and developing countries with whom we want to build up supply partnerships for green hydrogen. Germany's hydrogen strategy pools the measures of the different ministries of the federal government, and it was funded with around 10 billion euros from the government. And this strategy facilitates and promotes private investment along the entire hydrogen value chain. Above all, we are counting on the following measures. Firstly, integrated projects along the entire value chain. We also want to enhance the regulatory conditions for investment in order to lower production costs and create incentives for infrastructure development. And hydrogen and its derivatives also play an important part in decarbonizing the transport sector. This applies particularly to areas such as aviation and shipping, where battery-powered engines are not an option for the long-haul, heavy-duty trucking sector. We are strengthening research and development along the entire hydrogen value chain in order to support the market scale-up of green hydrogen and Germany as a center for technology. We do also research on new technological concepts under real-world conditions. A key issue in this context is converting unavoidable industrial emissions, for example from the steel industry, into primary products for fertilizers, plastics or fuels. Green hydrogen certainly plays a vital role here, and India is surely interested in these technologies. It is also clear that we need international cooperation. Only if we join forces, we can succeed in the global transition from fossil fuel to renewable energy markets. And that is why India and Germany closed a partnership for sustainability and clean energy when Prime Minister Modi visited Berlin in May last year. By the way, in the next days, German Chancellor Scholz will come to India to visit India with a big delegation of industrial leaders. According to this agreement, Germany will spend up to 10 billion euros until 2030 for projects in India. Projects to fight the climate change and to reach the net zero goal as early as possible. Talking about climate neutrality in my company, ThyssenKrupp, we have to avoid around 20 million tons of CO2 emissions before 2045. And as you may know, we are running the biggest steel plant in Europe and will need hundreds of thousands of tons of hydrogen a year starting in 2026 to replace coal by green molecules in direct reduction plants. We have an investment of 2.5 billion for the next 3 years in Duisburg. But ThyssenKrupp is not only part of the problem, we are also help with solutions. We are one of the few companies in the world which build water alkalic electrolyzers in a big scale. This is the business of ThyssenKrupp Nucera, for example, with a 2 gigawatt project in Neom in Saudi Arabia. And we are also one of the few companies worldwide able to build big ammonia and methanol plants with a production about 1 million tons a year. And this is the business of ThyssenKrupp Uhde. And we will need a lot of this ammonia as a carrier to ship the hydrogen over long distances, as you cannot ship the hydrogen as a gas, also not liquid in the moment. There are no ships available. There are good negotiations ongoing between ThyssenKrupp and Indian companies about common projects in India, and I think we will announce something in the summer of this year. What is India doing in the hydrogen sector? We heard about the big ambitions. The goal of the Indian government is the production of 5 million tons of green hydrogen in 2030. This is written in the National Green Hydrogen Mission, which was published recently. This plan will, at the first step, severely accelerate the demand for renewable energy. The good message is there's an undisputedly huge potential for the production of hydrogen in India with solar power, but also with wind power. Solar power has this special feature here in India that it is much more stable over the day and also over the year, more than most of the other countries. The less good message is there's always a competition between the usage of renewable for the hydrogen production and the direct usage of renewable energy for decarbonization. And there's another conflict occurring. Will you, in India, use the green hydrogen to decarbonize your country, or will you export it? Germany and also Europe needs a lot of imported hydrogen. In Germany, we expect an import quota of up to 80%, talking about 100 terawatt hours in 2030, which means around 3 million tons of hydrogen a year. As you see, a very big market, and there's a lot more you can do with green hydrogen produced in India. Regarding the foreseeable big amounts of CO2 emissions, especially in the coal industry for the next at least 20 years, the production of synthetic aviation fuels, e-fuels or e-methanol made by hydrogen and carbon dioxide could be a very interesting option. We do a lot of research in Germany on all these carbon-to-chem technologies as an alternative for storing the CO2 under the Earth's surface or the sea. The climate-neutral fuels for the aviation industry, but also for the shipping industry, are, by the way, a future market worth many, many billions. And also other figures for the fast-growing hydrogen economy are impressive. 680 major projects announced globally, reflecting an investment of $240 billion by 2030. $22 billion or 10% in planned investments have reached FID, are under construction or are already in operation. And overall, the investment proposals need to triple to $700 billion by 2030 to meet the 2050 global net zero target. Europe set the goal to produce around 100 gigawatt of green hydrogen in 2030. But Europe has anyway to importing more green hydrogen than it will export in the near future. And that is why we have to look outside of Europe in those regions of the world that are rich in wind and solar power. The German government has, for example, put together a hydrogen potential atlas for Western African countries. It maps the local potential for the production and export of green hydrogen, taking ecological, economic, social and technical criteria into account. And the result of this atlas are very promising. West Africa alone could produce up to 165,000 terawatt hours of green hydrogen per year. This represents several times the amount of hydrogen that we probably need in Germany or in Europe. Furthermore, production would be very cheap. Most of it could be produced by under €2.50 per kilogram, related to the very low energy prices. Coming back to our international partnerships, the federal government is not just looking to partners in our neighboring countries of Africa, such as Namibia. It is also working on a strategic cooperation with Australia. And this is very interesting, as we already heard that India and Australia recently established an Indian-Australian economic cooperation and trade agreement. So India is perfectly situated between Germany and Australia and can contribute to our supply chain. And much better, all of this is wonderfully paying to the Indo-Pacific cooperation strategy of the EU launched in 2021. By the way, our high supply feasibility study with Australia identifies the relevant regulatory, technical and economic obstacles that need to be overcome in order to develop a supply chain for green hydrogen. And one important message is that gives us confidence that the costs of transporting hydrogen are almost negligible in view of the favorable production conditions in regions with an abundance of sun and wind, such as India. We talk about transport costs of less than 10% of the end price of the hydrogen. And that's why the German government signed the bilateral hydrogen accord with the Australian government in summer 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, to come to an end, you can see that green hydrogen is a buzz topic which is developing with incredible momentum. Now is the time to take the initiative. It is now a matter of sustaining this accomplishment while moving closer to the goal of climate neutrality at the same time, in all sectors of industry, mobility and also heating. Therefore, we need three things. First, technological openness in all fields of application. Second, the fast scaling up of worldwide production capacities for green hydrogen, its derivatives, means electrolyzers, ammonia plants. We have still very low capacities at the moment. And third, sufficient import and distributing infrastructures. We need ports, we need ships, we need pipelines. Let us work together on these challenges. Germany, as a technology provider in India, in his roaring 20s, as we learned yesterday, which is tremendous possibilities under a strong leadership of Prime Minister Modi and very high ambitions on the way to becoming the third largest economy in the world. The slogan has to be, think big and act fast. I wish all of us every success in this endeavor. Thank you very much.
Our next session, ladies and gentlemen, will be nothing short of a masterclass on doing business in times of a slowdown. This augurs well for the economy. At a time when India, the most populous country, has emerged as a serious contender to become the world's startup capital, it is becoming clearer that selectivity in deal-making will be the key to the future. Who better to talk about this than trailblazing startup entrepreneurs and venture capitalists themselves? So please help me in welcoming on stage Ritesh Agarwal, founder and group CEO of OYO. Ashutosh Sharma, India Head, Process Ventures, erstwhile Naspers. Divya Gokalnath. Give them a big hand, ladies and gentlemen. Divya Gokalnath, co-founder Byju's. Rajesh Mago, co-founder and CEO of Make My Trip. Lingraju Saukar, President Kindle. Vidit Atre, co-founder and CEO, Misho. They will be in conversation with Surabhi Agarwal, editor Technology, The Economic Times, on unicorns, balancing growth and profitability. Give them a big hand, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you, Dilip, and welcome to all of you once again. I hope you're having a good time of the 2 days of GBS, and I hope you enjoy this another very, very power-packed panel. I say this not because probably the average age of this panel is 35, excluding me, but also because the valuation, the combined valuation of this panel is maybe $50 billion, $40 billion? Right. So thank you once again for joining us today. And the topic that we are discussing is profitability versus growth. It's $1 million question, in fact, $1 billion question, because I was reading some numbers and they suggest that in 2021, out of the unlisted 51 unicorns, 9 were profitable. That number went down to 6 in 2022. And this comes at a time when all of the companies are sort of focusing on profitability, maybe laying off thousands of people, cutting out the frills. But at the same time, the profitability is going down, revenues are increasing. So let's talk about what are the reasons behind this. What is focusing, what is probably prompting this focus towards profitability? Is it the times that we are in, induced by the funding winter, induced by the macroeconomic challenges, or the startup ecosystem is finally maturing in India? I'd like to start with you, Ritesh, first. If you could talk a little bit about, your thoughts on this entire debate, because you've said that, OYO is very, very close to profitability. And we've also seen you rethink your listing, right? And maybe waiting for the right moment to hit the public markets. Your thoughts?
You see, clearly, I think, like you mentioned, the year 2022 was the year of number of unicorns rising. I believe that year 2023 will be the year of profitable unicorns rising. So I think the same way as you're tracking number of unicorns. I think you should start tracking number of profitable unicorns, and I think every month you will see a few more. As you've been seeing already in the public markets, a few companies have announced EBITDA positive recently. I think the reasons of why profitability is important is, I think, well known, so I will not brood too much on the topic. I will share just 2 or 3 important contexts in terms of the what of it. I think the first and the foremost is a lot of people in the startup world talk about the rule of 40. That is, your growth and your profit margin net should be 40 plus. I think in this new world we live in, the rule of 40 comes with a basic requirement of profit margin. So you do 30% growth, get 10% profit is fine. You do 20% margin and 25% growth is fine. At least that's my big learning, or a simple mantra that I feel is easier for me to understand, my colleagues to understand, broader ecosystem to understand. The second also, I think that how this profitability is coming, while part of it is definitely through cost structure innovation, and a big learning for me is that when you're building a business, you don't just need revenue competency, you also need to use cost as a competitive advantage. But there's a lot of profit coming because of economies of scale. Because technology businesses, there's no capex, right, mostly. Due to which the only investment is the personnel, technology and marketing, which in some place caps out. You don't spend more than a certain amount. So all the additional revenue flows to profit, which is what a lot of companies are starting to see benefit of. For us at Toyo, I think COVID was the time when these losses dramatically increased, not just for us, but everyone in the travel industry. But I think as we've come out of COVID, that has translated quite positively. We've seen that we used COVID to improve our margins, our infrastructure, our relationships with our consumers and hotel partners. And we have now translated that to margins. So we announced 2 quarters this year, Q1 and Q2, Q1 of $1 million of EBITDA, Q2 of $7 million. And I'm sure few of us, Rajesh's business has been creating some fantastic strides as well. So I hope that travel industry continues to see the upside of this rapid improvement in times to come.
Right. So I think you made a very important point about, profitable unicorns. I think that's what the industry is now focusing on. That's what we are more and more hearing about. Now, I want to understand maybe from Divya, if you could just take this question on, what are your thoughts on being a profitable unicorn? You are in a edtech market, which is sort of not a very established category. You're trying to build that category. Something like that exists for you where you can forego growth for profitability?
Yeah, and especially for edtech, right? So maybe I can just start by thinking about the scale. We have 1,200 unicorns across the world, 115th in India. So there is a reason why we are growing at this scale, and I was also looking at the numbers. If you look at the global edtech market is growing at 16.4%, and India is soon to be the edtech capital of the world. We are growing at 40%. These are one of those segments which are very fortunate to, I'll say, have a double bottom line where you can do well and do good, in the sense that you can also create an impact while having strong business metrics. And it's also something that can create impact at scale. Now, that being said, you spoke about profitability. I'll take one step back and say that every startup, irrespective of a segment, if you think about it, has 4 stages, right? There is seed, there is early, there is growth, and then finally there is maturity. Now, seed is when you first create your product development happens. And then early is when you understand what your product market fit is. How does it work? And you start acquiring your first set of students. So Byju's was actually bootstrapped for the first 6 years. We were profitable for the first 6 years. We were in a model where we were completely offline and we were cash generating and positive. The next phase, which is the growth phase, is where you invest a lot, say in marketing, in growth. Investors put in a lot of money, and that's the time when you want to really, really scale and have that market dominance so that you're able to enable that sort of reach of your product to the masses. So this is the third stage. And this is when, the whole question of growth versus profitability comes in, where you may compromise profitability for growth. But any founder with a long-term vision, knowing that, in the long term, this is going to be a sustainable business, and sustainability comes only with profitability, right? That is when you set your mind for the long run and you enter the last phase, which I think we are also very close to entering, which is a maturity phase. And it is at this point that your growth happens organically. There is valuation, but there is also value creation, which is very important, especially in education, where you go broad, but you also go deep. Right? So, I think I answered your question in a round way, but as a teacher, because I'm a teacher first, I like to go to the basics and then go to the advanced. This is how I kind of look at the cycle of the entire startup ecosystem. So the question really, whether it's macroeconomic conditions or whether it is the Indian startup ecosystem maturing, no one really knows the answer. It's a combination of both, because even today when the CEO of Blackstone was speaking, he said, look, previously we would say just look at 30% growth, forget about profitability. Now we're like, look at 15% profitability, don't worry about growth, right? So even that, the directions are changing, but I think that's good, and founders, with the theme of this event of reimagine, recalibrate, and that's what we need to do every single day. We need to learn, we need to unlearn, we need to relearn, we need to adapt. And I think that is the key to creating something long-term.
Sure. So, Vidit, I'll come to you next. And, like Divya said, that the entire question is about whether focusing on 30% growth and foregoing profitability, or having a 15% profit at the rate of maybe lesser growth. Where are you on this entire debate? Because, we've seen Meesho pivot to from social commerce to maybe a different kind of a model, and hats off to you for taking on the likes of Amazon and Flipkart, right? So where are you on this entire debate? On which side of this entire debate are you on?
Thank you, Surbhi. So by the way, I will second a lot of what just Ritesh and Divya talked about, right? If you look at the last, I would say 1.5 decades of technology sector in India, it was about getting to scale. So if you were trying to aspire for the same profitability 5 years ago, I would have said it would have been very, very hard. So if you look at just us, pre-pandemic, we had about 1 million people transacting on Meesho every month. Now we have about 35 million people transacting with us every month, and about 140 million people annually, right? So when you are at such a large scale, you're able to kind of get your fixed costs in terms of marketing, in terms of people. Really, it's very easy to kind of recover that. So you take that goal, you can really aspire for good growth as well as good profitability. So I also feel that the tech ecosystem in India is now getting at least closer to that maturity, where taking this goal does not come at, hey, should I think about growth or profitability? I don't think it's a trade-off in my head anymore. And that understanding, even within our team, took some time, because again, it was not there in the ecosystem in terms of culture. But once it has come, it has become very clear that both of them have to be in the same direction. And I think that has been one of the big things. So internally, we don't take siloed goals of either growth or profitability anymore. The second thing, which is also very important, is I think because the stage or some of the law of large numbers where we are at, if you look at our growth in the last couple of years, even last year, if you look at 2022, when we started to focus a lot on profitability, we still doubled our business. But I don't think expectations of like 3-digit growth can be forever, right? Like at some point in time, it starts to matter that, hey, you are growing like 30, 40, 50% year on year because you're a new age company. People expect higher growth rates, but you're also like profitable. So I think that the mindset change that has come inside the company, and now we see, by the way, getting there very, very soon. Like we have taken a goal of becoming profitable as a company this year. Just over the last 12 months, when we started last year, we were focused only on growth. When we ended the year in December, we had cut down by our burn by like 90%, right? So massive change. And it happened because of the focus that we started to have and all the mindset which I talked about that completely changed within the organization. And I think that's true for the entire ecosystem as well.
So thanks for that answer. I guess, I think to summarize, I think you were saying it's not just profitability or growth. There can be a middle way, and it's all about the mindset change. I'd like to come to you, Lingaraju, and, I think I had a chance to interview your chairman recently, and he said that Crindle is the world's the largest startup with $20 billion of revenue, and you are trying to reinvent that company after the sort of split from IBM. So could you talk a little bit about how you are reinventing Crindle, and what are the possible lessons that the Indian startup ecosystem could take from you?
I think I'm certain that the Indian startup ecosystem is far more deeper and evolved in the lessons across. But having said that, yes, we do get categorized as a startup because we're just about a 12-month old company. But having said that, we do have an established business of building, operating, and managing vital systems for large enterprises and customers across. And the work that we do for them and the environments that we build and operate for them is pretty essential for them. It's not optional. So irrespective of any business environment, those systems have to keep working and running. So that's the core. But at the core of that transformation for us in the last 1 year, it's been about 3 dimensions. One is customers. So basically retaining and getting our customers and taking them with newer capabilities that we've got in the new practices. So that's one dimension. The second dimension is our own employees, which is as we move from a product-centric organization into a services-centric organization, the whole culture change, the whole behavior and capabilities being critical. And third is, of course, the certification and capabilities. I think on these three dimensions, it's still a long journey ahead, but we have seen green shoots. Our business is growing. Our customers are rewarding us with new businesses. Our employees are rewarding us with good engagement scores and new capabilities, and our certification gone up. So I think the last 1 year has been good for us. And as we see ahead, I think we will continue to adapt as we move ahead as well.
Right, right. Thank you for that answer. Rajesh, coming to you, if I could call Make My Trip the OG, because you guys have been around for a long, long time, and you listed, I think, 13 years ago. You've seen multiple cycles of downturn as well as, boom time. So what is your take on this entire growth versus profitability debate? Having seen the worst and the best of times, having ridden through multiple cycles, what are your learnings and takeaways?
Yeah, no, happy to share my thoughts. In fact, a slightly different perspective, and a lot has been said by the colleagues already here, and they were spot on, all those points. But you know what our experience over 2 decades has also been, a huge amount of learning, like you said, many cycles up and down. The biggest learning that I think I can share here is that I don't think we should make a mistake of thinking growth or profitability in a way that it is forced down the throat, right? I mean, I don't think that's the way to look at it. Neither growth should be pushed down the throat, nor profitability should be pushed down the throat. It is a function of the life cycle of the company, because like it has been said by all four of my colleagues here, that the profitability naturally comes with scale, and you have to get to that scale, right? So now suddenly the environment has changed, and I will say, okay, last year was growth focus for everyone, and now it's a profitability focus for everyone. May not be true, because I don't think it will make sense to generalize at an aggregate level. So you should see specific business. I can tell you there are many businesses who would still need to invest, and they wouldn't have reached that threshold of scale that they would be naturally making profit. So if they now start to think about, say, okay, I need to really now, because that seems to be the trend, needs to be focusing on profitability, I think that'll be counterproductive. So that's point number one that I wanted to make. Having said this, I think what is important is the learning for whatever has been happening in the last 3-4 years. The India, given that India was really, really hot investment destination, India has been attracting huge amount of capital. And when there is capital available in abundance, that sometimes, leads to, all of us sort of getting carried away and making some strategic mistakes of how should we run the business. So, just to give you an example, rather than just saying that we should be ultimately making profitability or not focusing on growth or vice versa, we would end up doing, just because I've got huge amount of capital, no questions asked, I will probably be able to go back and look at some of those, hygiene or rather vanity metrics, and then, I will go back to investors and I'll get some more money coming in. I will just start working on inducements and go completely overboard in terms of pushing the paddle in terms of just getting the growth in, right? And the growth might not be the right growth, because you might end up getting the traffic growth or the users growth. But, I think pretty much every business has realized in India that the moment that inducements go out of the equation, the froth goes away. Right? So I think some of those malpractices, some of those, sort of bad practices that creep in just because there is capital available in abundance is the one should be the focus area, in my view, and not necessarily, just forcing, one agenda or the other onto your business. I'll just give you one example and then we can move on. So, and Make My Trip has been, running the business for over 2 decades. And not many people know when we went public in 2010, we were profitable on the back of air business for 3 consecutive years because we had reached that scale. And I always used to say to not only the investors and the other stakeholders that you get to a scale for an internet business, you can't not make money, right? Because, there is, as Ritesh was pointing out, there are 2 or 3 heads that you end up investing money. So once you reach that scale, all the fundamental metrics kick in, you will end up making money. You can't not stop making money, right? So I think that's the way that you would think. But then, later on we got into another line of business that you have to investment. So you can't not invest in the new line of business just because now somebody is telling me that I should be profitable. So I think we should keep that thing in mind, that's really critical.
Right. Thank you. Ashutosh is head of process. The point that Rajesh was making that, because there is so much of capital, the froth creeps in. What is your take on this? I know you have got investee companies sitting on this panel, so maybe it's a tough answer to this question for you.
I think slightly different viewpoint. So there is, for all kinds of companies, there is a organic path to profitability, which in normal times is what you take. And then we are in unique situation at this point, right? This kind of downturn or macro softness is due to a cocktail of 4 or 5 or 6 reasons. Unlike previous times when it was internet bubble, real estate bubble, one thing, right? And therefore, sort of unique circumstances require unique solutions. And I think if we live this, then there is a fight to be had on the other side. And therefore, one should take that lens also. While organic path to profitability is important, but ensuring that you survive this is equally important. As an investor, I completely agree with Rajesh. Look, there is a lot of dry powder sitting on the sidelines. A lot of funds have raised a lot of money over the last 2 years. A bunch of that is not deployed at this time. And the only thing that's gating that deployment is uncertainty. I think high interest rate, low interest rate does not matter. That reflects in price. Uncertainty is something that an investor is wary about. And so as we see some green shoots in the US related to the war, stuff in China, I think a lot of money will come. The initial steps will be tentative, but then within some time, as uncertainty recedes further, I think we will see a more aggressive deployment happen over later this year or early next year, I think.
But I'll take you up on that follow-up question on this particular point. Do you think that once the capital is back, some of this discipline which has got imbibed into the startups, or at least the focus towards it, will again get lost?
I think as humankind, there's nothing related to startups. We have a very short-term memory. So that's a big problem. And I think we all should kind of remember what we went through at this time. And therefore, I think in low interest rate situations, there will be a lot of capital available, and it's unfair to not use that capital. I feel it's not right. And so you should use it, but always remember at the back of your mind as to what you're going through right now, and always keep that in your calculations as you move forward.
Right. Coming back to you, Divya, like Ashutosh said that, we should remember this time and probably what it did to our businesses. How do you think, you want to reinvent Byju's from this current experience, from what the pandemic has done to your business? Of course, the edtech sector in India holds a lot of promise, given the fact that a vast majority of our country and its people still don't have access to quality education. So how are you going to pivot your business, and what is the long-term focus and vision for EdTech?
Yeah, and before I start, we all startup founders put a lot of pressure on Ashutosh. We said, whatever we say, you have to say yes. Okay, and the best answer, he gives us a check. So he has a check in his pocket and he's promised to invest in that company as we work out.
I hope he's not getting mobbed after this.
Okay, so, you rightly said, and one thing that I've learned is we are pioneers in EdTech, but we're definitely not pioneers in perfection, right? So we've learned a lot as we've grown the company. While officially we are 11, 12 years old, but we've been teaching for the last 17, 18 years. And we've seen how students' needs have evolved. They say that there are decades when nothing happens, but then there are weeks when decades happen. And that's what happened in EdTech. literally overnight, our classrooms changed for the first time in 100 years. All stakeholders, be it students, be it parents, institutions, principals, they all transitioned online. And suddenly there was, I would not even say a spotlight, but a floodlight on EdTech, where there was so much awareness of the benefits of online learning. So prior to the pandemic, prior to 2019, 2020, our biggest challenge was how do we create awareness that online learning is beneficial for students, and we also have been positively disrupting ourselves. So our journey starts that we were completely offline. We went from a coffee shop to a classroom to an auditorium to a stadium, and then in 2015 we completely went online to a learning app, and over there we use tech as an enabler to enhance personalization, to ensure interactivity, to ensure that students love learning all over again. So we've also been positively disrupting. And in 2019, when the pandemic hit, we understood, in 2020 in fact, that the best of learning is neither completely online nor completely offline, but just like everything in this world, it's hybrid. The way we work, the way we travel, the way we live, the way we learn, the way we teach, everything has changed forever. So we adapted to this new normal, and post-pandemic, so now we have multiple formats. So right from online to hybrid, we've launched 300 plus hybrid learning centers across the country, where we have, and this is in 2022, which is supposed to be the year of the funding winter, right? But I think if you have your fundamentals in place, if you are, even though you're a big company, if you have that, if you retain the agility of a startup, if you are continuously innovating, you can still adapt to the evolving needs of a customer, of a student. I think that is paramount to ensure that you stay relevant, no matter whatever happens, right? It could be summer or it could be winter outside, but internally you need to be very, very strong, and you need to pivot to their evolving and changing needs.
So like you said, that probably the answer lies in being hybrid, the way we work, the way we sort of live in these times. Vidit, I'd like to come to you. As far as commerce is concerned, we've seen huge growth when it comes to e-commerce. We've seen different kind of models evolving, 10 minutes delivery, 20 minutes delivery. We've seen Meesho also pivot from social commerce to a model where I think you're trying to be more in the affordable category and competing with the likes of Amazon and Flipkart. I want to understand from you that, one, what is your take on the overall e-commerce market? Do you think that it's become like a duopoly where Amazon and Flipkart control a majority of the market, and how do you see a player like Meesho in this space? And secondly, what do you think will be the overall evolution of commerce in India? Do you agree with Divya on that? Will it be sort of phygital? Will it be hybrid? Or we are moving towards a more and more online model?
Yeah, so I think two questions. Let me start with the first one, right? I think one big thing has been that the definition of e-commerce until now has been very narrow, right? So when people talk about e-commerce, if you're talking about smartphone e-commerce, then yes, it's a duopoly. If you talk about, hey, the top 4-5% of income segment in India, then maybe yes. But if you remove all these nuances, ifs and buts, I don't think it's a duopoly, right? Like you see, as soon as you go beyond the top 5% of the population, you realize that even before the pandemic, the penetration of e-commerce was nothing. And I think that was the wave that we kind of rode. Like what we do is we essentially realize a very simple fact. Back in 2015, we started the company. It's called Meesho because we wanted to give a shop of their own to each and every small business in India. That's why Meesho means Meri Shop. And the reason we wanted to do this was 85% of overall retail in India is led by small businesses, right? And these are not the kind of categories which existed in some of the e-commerce before. 85% is small business led, and none of them were selling online. And we said, India, e-commerce cannot happen. They cannot realize its vision, cannot bring retail from offline to online unless real small businesses come online. And by the way, they have very, very large barriers of entry. One of the biggest one is like their cost structure. They don't have the same amount of margins as big brands. So if you charge commissions, a lot of them are not like viable online, right? So what we did, we really built India's first true marketplace. Like we built a platform where a small business can come, list a product for free, sell it for free. We do not charge any commission. And we really made, like now we have about 1 million small businesses who are selling about 100 million products to now 140 million consumers, right? Like really give them scale, really give them market access. So I'm saying none of this existed. And that's why I don't really agree that if you look at broad e-commerce is all kind of online retail, it's definitely not a duopoly. Now coming to the second question, right? So let me pick two metrics. So if you look at India's current penetration of e-commerce, which is like the sale that is happening online as a percent of total retail, it's still between 5 to 6%, very small, right? You compare it with the Western countries, that number is in 20s. You compare it with like some of the places in the East, you look at China, like in 30s, right? So India is still very, very nascent. So I don't think like we will come to a question around, hey, is there enough growth in e-commerce for the next 5-7 years? I think we have to keep innovating around the cost models, that every next 10 or 50 million consumers come from lower income segments, and hence they can afford something which is lesser than the last customer. So you have to really innovate on the cost structure. The same cost structures don't work, right? So they want more and more affordable products. So as you keep doing, the market in front of us is quite large. The second thing is, as I was talking about even earlier, we just look at our internal metrics for 2022 as compared to 2021, and I'm talking about calendar year, we doubled at a year when we are focusing a lot on profitability. So just from this standpoint, I don't think growth is going to be a problem. I think we're still very early in the journey, which is what we are excited about. We have a lot of problems to solve, and if we do, we can really achieve this dream of having an e-commerce platform that empowers like 50, 70, 100 million small businesses in India to sell to 1 billion consumers. That's what we want to make happen.
So thank you. I think what you're trying to do is building a category here. If I could come to Ritesh now. Ritesh, I think when you started Oyo, there was nobody like that, and you continue to be the market leader in that category. But I think the pandemic shook you up a little bit, and then you came up quite fast from it. So what is your sort of lessons from the pandemic, and what do you see the future of your business post the pandemic? How are you reinventing yourself to be profitable at the same time, making sure that your growth continues?
Yeah, look, I think a few months back, I think I was discussing this in one of the panel where the question was, which cities do the best in Oyo? And I said, places like Banaras, Coimbatore, Ujjain are the ones spiking. Today is Mahashivratri, and I'll tell you this, that cities like Coimbatore, Ujjain, everywhere where there is a big Shiv temple, I think they are sold out, and we are having to find places in other cities to be able to host customers. The reason why I wanted to start with that is to say domestic tourism is at the heart of the new generation growth that's coming in travel. We are sitting in this hotel. A lot of you travel around the country. Absolutely every hotel you'd stay in, people would tell you that earlier, especially in upmarket and mid-market segment, people would say that earlier we had some inbound customers and some domestic customers. Now it is almost entirely domestic travel. So I think domestic travel is, in my view, at the heart of what tourism will be in times to come. And I think having a predictable, trustworthy place, which Oyo solves for, is at the is an opportunity there. I think COVID. Now I'll sort of go back to COVID and come back into the future of reinvention. Right before COVID, we had a year of 300% year-on-year growth, with revenue of little over 10,000 crores, FY20. So, and people used to tell me, 9 saal se growth ho rahi hai. So in 10 years, once there is an economic down cycle. So we thought an economic down cycle could mean a 7, 8, 9, 10% revenue drop. Then came COVID, which removed any academic principles of downturn, and revenues dropped by like 60, 70% overnight. But good news is the strategy remained the same. You have to look at your cash, cost, and innovate. So we did all those three things, right? We tried to maintain cash, raise new cash. We raised 660 million in the middle of COVID. We improved our cost structures. I fundamentally believe that along with revenue and growth, cost competency, especially in businesses in India, will be a very critical competitive advantage in long term. In air business, I'm sure you've seen how Indigo has become a leading player, building that as a competence. Aditya was on our board, was instrumental in the early years there. And I think the third thing, which is innovation, is been the big reason of our revamp over the years. And let me just take a minute to explain you what we did there. The first is focus. And I'm sure every business on this platform is getting down to what are the 3 things you're going to focus on, 2 things you're going to focus on. So we said we'll do only hotels and homes, and we'll do it in India, Southeast Asia, and North Europe, which were our core markets, or markets where we had reasonable market position. We focused on business model that worked for us. So we were operating a lot of hotels before that. So we moved to a franchise kind of a model in our broader ecosystem, and I think that sort of worked for us. And we also did management contracts along with that, but I think almost entirely asset light. I think the third thing that we did, and in my view probably the most crucial, is we said we are the largest platform of predictable rooms in India, Indonesia, Europe. We will get every consumer demand that exists. So which meant in India, when Vande Bharat mission was, I'm sure some of you may have heard about Vande Bharat, it was the world's largest repatriation mission. We probably were one of the largest providers of rooms to Vande Bharat mission in India, Philippines, Indonesia, and equivalent platforms in Indonesia and Philippines. In Europe, people wanted bigger houses to be able to work from. So all our houses became domestic travel oriented, where people started going to our places and staying for equivalent events. So my view is that this is the world of being boring. So we believe that, like Vidit mentioned, we are a very small part of the market. I think 4-5% of the Indian market in terms of unbranded accommodation. So our view is all those hotels deserve to get upgraded to give a better room, a better washroom, a better check-in experience. And our job is to just keep improving that and compound it over the years. So we are not interested in doing new businesses, new geographies, but I think in our core markets, in our core business, we want to continue bringing best services to our customers and maybe premiumize more. So I think our segment called Oyo Townhouse has been doing very well. Consumers are increasingly saying they want to upgrade from that 1,000 to 2,000 segment to 2,000 to 2,500, some of our customers. So we are increasingly getting them more and more of our townhouse products, which hopefully will do well in times to come.
Right. Thank you, Ritesh. Rajesh, I want to come to you. Like Ritesh mentioned, that from a point where the business was growing at multiple double digits, it crashed to 60-70%. I'm not sure what are the figures for you, but we are getting mixed signals right now. Everywhere we go, airports are full, hotels are full, restaurants are full. At the same time, we are hearing of gloom and doom news, right? Layoffs, macroeconomic concerns, etc. So how would you kind of spell it out? How do you foresee the market coming up?
Yeah, sure. And by the way, the number for us was 95% down. It wasn't even 60-70%. So it obviously, everything came crashing down. And it was the mother of all kind of crises, we all sort of faced. The entire industry pretty much faced that. So, from that perspective, very quickly, it was just a two-pronged thing for us. And then I'll come to your question. One, of course, was crisis management, like all of us did. And, and get back to the basics and then figure out what you want to do. And, one of the biggest things that at least we picked it up was huge amount of automation, because we had the entire tech force suddenly free because hardly any business was happening. And we said, why don't we just make the best use of, the entire engineering team and figure out, the neglected areas, if you will, in the past. Because when the business is happening and, growing at a pace, you don't really get a chance sometimes to just, do some of the important projects. They take a backseat because something else is happening all the time. So that was one. And then I think the second track for us was very important, was that, while we are all doing crisis management, but, what is going to be the life post-pandemic? How would travel look like? What could be the future potential avenues, the new avenues of revenue streams, etc.? How would we can be even better future ready as we come out of the pandemic was our focus area. And, and that was hugely, in the zone of making more investments in the area. So we built multiple platforms. We got into new segments of business, corporate business. We built a platform for travel agents. Like Vidit was also saying, that India is not necessarily going to be all online. We all have realized, all the internet businesses, whether they were like, early in the game or they just recently joined, that it is going to be a hybrid way of doing it. And therefore, can we just build capabilities to be able to get that segment of demand as well? And then, believe it or not, we actually, in the middle of COVID, launched in the new market in the GCC as well. So the idea was that, while you're managing crisis, and it's not that, and maybe some learning was there from the past that we had seen the crisis and they will go. You have to manage them, but you don't need to panic. You also focus on what is going to be the life and how's the business going to look like post-pandemic. was our focus area. But coming back to the question that you asked, that how do we now see, like, you obviously see, as Ritesh was mentioning, huge amount of traffic, huge amount of, hotel occupancy, and driven by largely domestic tourism right now, which has been, by the way, a great sort of revolution all of a sudden, and I think that's potentially definitely going to drive the future of, I would say, even the overall India, the whole domestic economy, because it has actually come to life in terms of just size and scale, and the sheer amount of sort of disposable income that has improved over the last 10 years and so on. But if you really see overall, just in the travel sector recovery, there are 2 or 3 important things I think we should not miss. While we are very optimistic about, I think the future outlook is all positive. India is better poised relative to the entire world, whichever metric that you want to see, that we are all aware of. But if you look at, just very closely some of those numbers, and I'll tell you that, while you will see anecdotally airports are all busy, domestic tourism has come back and domestic travel is almost 100% recovered. But international travel is still not fully recovered, right? And it took us like 3 years, and 2 years was pandemic and 1 year full recovery. So it wasn't really, within 1 quarter everything was back. It took time for it to recover, slowly and gradually. And the other important thing that we should not miss is that the entire industry has actually gone through a lot, which means that, the balance sheets, even if you had a stronger balance sheet, and not many people actually had a very strong balance sheet suddenly, because it came from nowhere, and you didn't know how much more cash would you need, because suddenly the revenues were not happening. And so everybody is sort of busy managing their cash flow really, really tightly, and which effectively means is that there is a demand and supply gap driven by a lack of capacity, and that's because you're focusing on huge amount of load factors touching like 95%. I'm talking about airlines for instance, and making sure that the cash flows are better, we become profitable, we're generating some more cash, then I will put more planes. Long-term outlook is not a problem. We've all seen a historic Air India order. Indigo is going to follow suit. Long-term is not a problem at all. But short-term, I think it's going to be a tight fiscal discipline for all of us, which effectively means that there's going to be a gap, and therefore the fares might be high. And we've all seen the fares have been high. Even the ARRs have been really, really good. Because earlier there was leisure pent-up demand, and now there is business travel pent-up demand, including conferences, events, and you can see all happening across India. And because of which there is demand, there's huge amount of demand, and not to forget the weddings. For example, huge amount of backlog of weddings, etc. happening. So all of this is sort of driving the demand, and the capacity is low, and therefore high fares. And at some stage that rationalization has to happen, and that'll happen when airlines will get into a position. I was very happy to see Indigo declaring profits, for example, but all of them in the ecosystem, some of the hoteliers have been, declaring profits, etc. Hotel chains have been declaring profits as well. And, once all of this down, as it happens. And, like I mentioned, international in any case is going to take some more time.
So maybe I think it's all about sentiments right now, and if I've understood it correctly, or what Ashutosh was saying was that it's the uncertainty which is kind of stopping the investors from putting money, right? So if you could do a little bit of crystal gazing for us, this funding winter I think started the end of 2021, 2022 starting. How long will it last? I know that Divya and everybody else is going to listen to this answer very, very keenly.
Well, I'm not in the business of crystal gazing for sure. But let me say this, coming back to the point I made, right? It's a very unique situation this time. There is a few things at work which has led to this. And so it's a cocktail with bunch of different stuff. So we don't know how long or how bad the hangover will be, right? So having said that, I think there is green shoots. US has priced a few IPOs recently. the situation in China has changed vis-a-vis zero COVID policy. The war in Europe, there is some stalemate kind of a situation. There is no escalation anticipated anytime soon. Inflation is kind of flatlining in the US. So I think all those are green shoots, and therefore there is a part of me which says that probably we are a couple of quarters away from inflation then trending downwards, and then of course that really will help the capital markets. Now, having said that, I think I always feel that this is going to be a fascinating year for a PhD in economics to look back at 5 years from now, because we will have a bunch of these starts and stops, and oh my God, the market's opening, let me deploy 100 million. Oh, no, shit's hitting the fan, let me step back. So, I mean, I don't honestly have a good answer, but there is green shoots all around. So let's see.
Another question on that, I think previous speakers have also said this in 2 days of GBS, that how India is sort of a bright spot when it comes to global economy, and we've seen that while there has been a funding winter, there have been some companies which have managed to get funding, right? I mean, I think there is a sort of safe bets which is emerging. So what is your take on this?
No, I agree. And I was meeting someone this morning, and they shared a very good nugget of data. I've not verified it. And what they said is that US and China combined have 40 companies that have delivered 25% CAGR for 10 years. In India, that number is 100. So India probably does not allow for exponential growth for a long time, but it really allows for the opportunity for very, very long-term compounding story. And I think that's and this is not IP, I don't, like, this is not information that I have. I think every investor in the world has this information. And therefore, I think from a capital availability standpoint, I don't see a problem. As I said, it's just a matter of kind of certainty coming back in the market, volatility subsiding. The question of safe bets is, I mean, that's also math in the end, because look, interest rates are high. So you want to invest in businesses which can show near-term profitability versus long-term growth. And when the interest rates go down, it goes vice versa. So, I mean, that's a pricing question, and I think that will change as markets continue to open up.
Sure. So green shoots clearly emerging. I'd like to come to you, Mr. Lingaraju. You can maybe weigh a little bit of what he said and talk a little bit about what is your sense of, what are your clients telling you? What is your sense of the macroeconomic situation right now? Because I think tech spending is something that signals how companies are doing or how do they expect to do in the future, or in the short term. Yeah.
I think from the world that we see, it's a world of two lenses. One is India domestic, and then India out international, right? I think from an India domestic perspective, very clearly all indicators are very strong. We did hear the Prime Minister talk yesterday about the Techade and everything else around it. So given the tailwinds that we've got, I think the India tech spend for enterprises is going to be, I would say, pretty strong, leveraging 2 or 3 key elements. One is, of course, the drive to get to the 5 trillion economy in a few years. The strong, demographic dividend that we've got, which is a tailwind for us. And the third thing is that the India stack of technology that has really delivered big dividends across. So on the back of that, a lot of businesses around that will start. We are seeing a lot more positive optimism in that, whether it is the telecom segment into the getting into the 5G space, and banking going really spread out with a budget that's put such a significant impetus on infrastructure, then the multiplying effect of the banking segment would definitely kick off. So we'd see, and that's all going to be on the back of tech as well. So that's a second segment. Automotive, bit to wait and watch kind of a thing. But having said that, I see domestic demand on technology being very strong. I also see relative to the spend itself, the tech spend is going to be, we're talking about 11-12% on the growth rates on the tech spend. But when you look at it from an outside-in perspective, which also has a compounding effect to India, is that, yes, there is a degree of cautious optimism in international markets, whether it's Europe, the energy crisis out there, the geopolitics, which will drive geoeconomics, and at the same time, the element of rising cost structures there. I mean, sheer energy cost itself has taken up the cost of tech significantly up in some of the European countries. So all of that does have an impact, but I think while it's a headwind in the rest of the world, it definitely becomes a tailwind for India, given what India does, from not just doing IT services for the globe, but also the capability centers that are coming up here, the real high-end engineering work that's coming into India. So a lot of that is pretty strong and positive out here. And on the back of that comes in, of course, the India stack and the India tech and everything that builds around there. So pretty buoyant and positive.
Right. As far as startups are concerned, I think one of the stuff that has really headlined the news in the last 6-8 months has been the layoffs. And I was talking to the global CEO of Google and Microsoft recently, and both Sundar Pichai and Satya Nadella said that some of the companies maybe have overestimated the pandemic-driven trends, and some of that they thought that would be permanent. Some of the change in mindset, or the way people shop, or the way people consume content, right? That might not have happened, which led to people overhiring, and now sort of prudence coming in and realizing that maybe they have to cut costs and let people go. I want to understand from you, what is it that led to layoffs in India? What is it that led to layoffs in Indian startups? Maybe Ritesh, you'd like to take that question, and maybe after that Divya can take it.
Yeah, look, I think clearly, first off, I think it's important to acknowledge that the broader technology ecosystem has gone through it. Of course, the big tech, like you mentioned, have gotten impacted, but a lot of new age companies as well. But it'll happen at some point of time. I think companies in the travel space had to deal with the reflections of saying that, well, we should try and redesign our company for what our business will be like during COVID. The same probably is happening for companies who during COVID probably saw a lot of growth, but now have to redesign their business in the last year. But I think that learning or a sense of reflection will come to companies at some point of time. So I think due to which I'm sure companies are learning from it and trying to redesign their business for the long term. My view, that said, is that we should not mistake some of the redesign and layoffs at this point of time with saying that entrepreneurship or new age companies' growth itself is stunted. You should know that the speed at which new entrepreneurs are building new businesses is unprecedented. I come from a place called Raigada in Odisha. I don't know how many of you would have heard about that place name. Every day I get like an email from somebody from Raigada or Koraput or Jaipur saying I'm starting a new business in digital, or some people in offline or in manufacturing, depending on what's their interest. So I believe that this is the right time for people to build great companies. I think 2016, while it was not like now, I think 2016 was also a period when capital raising was hard. But a lot of new age successful companies got built, same in 2009. So I'm sure there will be fantastic companies that get built. I'll just end with saying that I think, while there are challenges, I do see that a lot of companies are also recruiting as we speak. So there will be capacity building, and new age companies will continue to be big drivers of new job creation as well, right? Like every month, if we add a few hundred hotels, those hotels will employ each one of them probably 5 to 10 extra staff. So I think fundamentally the job creation will continue to go ahead. I think clearly there is a learning for companies, including ours and the travel industry during COVID, and companies which, like you mentioned, like in the big tech post-COVID. But people will come out of it, and I'm confident that you will see, that they'll have compounding growth in both top line and profit in times to come.
Right. So with mass layoffs, I guess there's also job creation happening in different segments. Divya, would you like to share your thoughts on this? What do you think?
No, I think Ritesh actually beautifully captured it, right? What exactly is happening at scale. And while it is the unfortunate truth that a lot of big companies had to let go of some of their most valuable people, and we also faced that, right? We had to unfortunately part ways with about 5% of our workforce. And while I can't speak for every company, usually why this happens is because of, say, an economic downturn, or a shift in consumer behavior. There's so many reasons why it could happen. For us, it was because we had acquired 15 plus big companies with so many people. So there was a redundancy in role. So there would not be growth for the people who were in the system beyond a certain point, and that's why it unfortunately had to happen. But again, like Ritesh said, the job creation far surpasses the job loss, especially in India with the kind of demographic dividend that we have, the potential that we have, and even we at Byju's are actually net hirers. So we are one of the top 30 private companies who create jobs in the country. We are probably the world's largest job creators for teachers. So we have 20,000 teachers who are employed with us, teaching from India to the rest of the world, most of them women. So it's creating a new economy of jobs, highly respected professions. So while there is, a dip on one side, there's also a larger uptake on one side. And that's where the potential lies. And like Ritesh said, there are so many companies starting up right now because this is the age and time of a digital entrepreneur, right? Now, flexibility is the word that everybody looks for. And I always joke, Surbhi, I say that women wanted flexibility forever, but now since the entire world wants it, we all get it. So this has given a huge boost to the kind of jobs which are available, and like net, I think it's moving in the right direction.
Right. So I think I'll just close by a quick question to Vidit. Vidit, do you think it will get worse before it gets better?
Yeah, I think it already got quite worse. I don't think I only see recovery. And I'll talk about the Indian ecosystem. I speak to a lot of founders, again, Ritesh, Divya here, and they can definitely also add on it. I see last year was hard because that was the sharp right turn required from everyone's moving in the direction of growth, suddenly now has newer expectations. They had to change that business very, very fast. I think those times are gone. Now most people have a plan for this year, next year, and the year after. Some people may have financing needs, irrespective. But yeah, I don't think it's going to get worse from here.
I guess that's about it. Thank you so much for being a lovely, lovely audience. And thank you to all the panelists for a great conversation. Thank you very much.
Techade has come leaps and bounds to an unthinkable development levels. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great honor and pleasure to welcome Shri Nitin Gadkari ji, Union Minister of
Mr. Vinit Jain, MD Times Group, Mr. Bodhisatta Ganguly, ED Economic Times, distinguished dignitaries, invitees and all my dear friends, ladies and gentlemen. The vision of our Prime Minister is to make India as Atmanirbhar Bharat. The target given by the Prime Minister is of making of economy of $5 trillion. And now presently we are the fastest growing economy in the world. Anywhere for any industry, trade and business, infrastructure is very important. The water, power, transport and communication, without that we cannot develop industry, and without industry we cannot get capital investment, and without capital investment and industry we cannot create employment potential. So basically the world-class infrastructure is a challenge and is a mission for all of us given by the Prime Minister. So creation of infrastructure of international standard, this is one of the important tasks, and particularly I am related with the road ministry, and I am confident that at the end of 24, our road infrastructure will be equal to the US road infrastructure. That is to be target in my mind. Presently, the most important thing related with the economic activity, that our logistic cost is 16%. China, the logistic cost is 8 to 10%. In the European country, it is 12%, and the USA, it is 12%. So target is to take to this logistic cost up to single digit. That is to be 9%. And for that reason, we are planning for making of big highways where 100% we can save the fuel and time by which we can reduce the cost. In my office, there is a statement of American President John F. Kennedy that American roads are not good because America is rich. But America is rich because American roads are good. And that is exactly the feeling mission for all of us to make the Indian road of international standard. The finance minister has given the allocation of 10 lakh crore for development of infrastructure, particularly in this year in the budget. My department allocation is 2.7 lakh crores, 2.70 lakh crores. So actually, it's a plus point with us that we are every time monetize the road. We have 4 models. One is BOT, then hybrid annuity, then we are making EPC mode, and now first time there are also TOT, and now we are making InvIT. And it is really a great achievement for my department and NHI that this year we launch InvIT bonds in Bombay Stock Exchange. Actually, the time was given for 10 days, but first day, within 7 hours, our bond issue was subscribed 7 times more. I immediately go to Bombay and close the issue. So there is a good response. I am particularly appealing to all journalists that please invest money in NHI InvIT bonds. We are offering you 8.50% interest per year, and we will give you interest every month in your account, and NHI is AAA rating. At the same time, this year for bank guarantee, there was a lot of problems. Somewhere bank was demanding, suppose they want guarantee of 10 crore, bank was asking 10 crore deposit. So today it is really a very revolutionary change. We launched India's first ever surety bond insurance product, and by which now the contractors, even for collecting toll, for any contract, they don't need to give bank guarantee, performance guarantee. This surety bond it is to be a great opportunity. Totally, this is a new alignment. And up to the end of this year, before December, even within 3-4 months also you will get the result. From, we are making Greenfield Highway 10,000 kilometer. We are spending 7 lakh crore on that. And length under construction is 6,000 kilometer. I can assure you, first of all, first 14-lane Delhi-Meerut Express Highway. Previously it was 4.5 hours. Now it is 40 to 45 minutes. So this is the first express highway we have constructed. Then Delhi to Dehradun work is going on. It is with 2 hours. The new road we are already, construction is going on. Delhi to Haridwar in 2 hours. Delhi to Amritsar in 4 hours. Delhi to Katra in 6 hours. Delhi to Srinagar in 8 hours. Chennai to Bangalore in 2 hours. And Bangalore to Mysore in 1 hour. These are the major highways. Still we are making very good road, which is going to reduce the pollution of Mumbai and Pune. In Surat, Delhi-Mumbai Express Highway up to Surat, then we are constructing new Green Express Highway, which is a link between north to south. From Surat to Nasik, Nasik to Ahmednagar, Ahmednagar to Solapur, Solapur to Kurnool. Already 2 of the packages, Prime Minister has already, Bhumi Pujan program was over, and by which after Kurnool, we can go to Chennai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Kanyakumari, all the south end. Now we don't need to go to Mumbai and Pune. Don't need to use Mumbai-Pune Express Highway. It will reduce the traffic congestion in Mumbai and Pune. The lesser fuel consumption around in Green Express Highway, the estimate is 110 crore liters of fuel would be saved every year. Reduce CO2 emissions, annual reduction of carbon dioxide emission by 250 crore kg. That is to be achievement, and my ministry I am doing, it's a very favorite subject to me, because we are working on ethanol, methanol, biodiesel, bio-CNG, electric and hydrogen. I have got flex engine car that is 100% on ethanol from Toyota. 40% the car is generating power, and 60% petrol. In place of petrol we will use ethanol. So ethanol rate is 60 rupees per liter and petrol is 120 rupees per liter. So ultimately the average rate will come 25 rupees per liter if the flex engine is there. Already Bajaj, TVS and Hero, they have already launched their two-wheelers on flex engine where we can use 100% ethanol. Ethanol is a green fuel, and from 2004 I am working on a mission that diversification of agriculture towards energy and power sector. किसान को अब हम अन्नदाता के साथ ऊर्जादाता बनाना चाहते हैं. Even there are 3 types of hydrogen. One is from petroleum, other is from coal, and third is from biomass and water. In my own city in Nagpur, we are selling our sewage water to government of Maharashtra for generating power in Koradi and Kaparkada, and we are getting 300 crore per year as a royalty from the sewage water. So idea is, we are the highest manufacturer of electrolyzer in the world now. So we can make green hydrogen, and even in biodigester, by using organic waste, we can make green hydrogen. So there are a lot of technologies available, and my particular insist is that we have to involve agriculture community, because the agriculture growth rate is a big problem for Indian economy. In our GDP growth, the contribution of agriculture, rural India is only 12%. The population belongs to agriculture, rural India is 65%. 20 to 24% from the manufacturing sector, and 52 to 54% contribution to GDP from service sector. So by making this diversification of agriculture towards energy and power, we can go up to 20% contribution from agriculture, which is going to create new jobs. 100% is going to eradicate the poverty, and now already the Prime Minister is the initiative. There are 124 aspirant districts, those who are socially, economically, educationally backward, where now we are identifying 500 blocks. And I am confident that by this policy, we are going to create more employment potential and growth in the agriculture area. Regarding the longest expressway, 8-lane, that is to be Delhi-Mumbai Express Highway, I don't want to elaborate anything. You can go there and take the ride of it. 276 kilometers is completed. And now it is from Delhi to Jaipur. Presently it is 2.5 hours. But after we are making new connection to it, so it will be 2 hours from Delhi to Jaipur. And Delhi to Mumbai will be 12 hours. So this highway is also one of the important. The length is 1,386 kilometers. It is highest in the Asia. I feel that this is very important, and this type of many express highway, green corridors, then economic highways we are making, connecting to port, connecting to cement factory, connecting to different type of industrial clusters, logistic parks. And in my own ministry, we are making multimodal logistic parks, 35 MMLPs of 2 lakh crore. Because these are the very important things where we are going to reduce the logistic cost. So already in Chennai, Bangalore, Nagpur, Pune, Indore, Jalna, Visakhapatnam, 35 sites, the work is already going on. Jogi Dhopa, I was in Meghalaya, and there is a connectivity for all the state in northeast to Jogi Dhopa in Assam, by which it is going to use, we are going to use the Brahmaputra as a waterway. When I was minister, we have completed waterways, Brahmaputra. Then we completed dredging in Barak River. And actually with the request of Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sushma ji was telling me that if it's possible you can do it. So we are making dredging up to Mungli port in Bangladesh, 250 kilometers Brahmaputra in Bangladesh also, we will complete the dredging at that time. So there in Jogi Dhopa there is a waterways, national highway, airport and railway. That is the reason it is a multimodal hub. We are making 670 wayside amenities. Every 40 or 50 kilometers there is one amenity. There are restaurants, fuel stations, drone port, heliport, all type of facilities are there. And this is very important to create more jobs in the country. We are making digital highway. In Mumbai-Delhi Express Highway, we are making special ducts for gas, for petrol, diesel, for water, even for IT cable also, and for all the things we can use it. So we are now making digital highway that is also under consideration. We are making 260 ropeway and cable car. This is very important. Today, I was a half hour, I was in the traffic from airport to coming to this hotel. My idea is to making one of the ropeway mass rapid transport from Dholakua to Manesar. So it will be a double-decker bus having the capacity of 200 people. So it can resolve the problem. To going by this road is a big problem. But we are making Dwarka Expressway. That resolve the problem. Then Shiv Murti Tunnel, where we are making one tunnel connecting to Vasant Vihar. And the work probably end of December we will complete. But still the traffic on this road is very high. So this is also a economically proposal, good proposal. Then we are making ropeway in world famous religious scenes. One is Kedarnath, Hemkund Sahib Gurudwara, Nilkant Madhav Temple Rishikesh, Hanuman Giri Temple Nainital, Trambakeshwar Temple Nasik, Bijli Mahadev Temple Kullu. Lot of where we are making ropeway, cable car, funicular railway. Now we are planning to make double-decker bus in the sky for Bangalore. We are working on that. Our basic priority is that how we can create mass rapid transport on electricity is the need of the hour. Then we are making the tunnel of 110 tunnels of 300 kilometers with outlay of 2 lakh crore. The Jojila tunnel is one of the good example. We have 4 times tendered that tunnel, and the first time we saved 5,000 crore in one project. The estimated cost was 12,000 crore, and we received the tender with 5,200 crore. So we have taken a lot of effort. Associam, one of the institutions from Delhi, we have taken the seminars, many consultants, many time, and we save the cost. The tunnel, Jojila tunnel is already is very important. For the end of this year or next year in 21st January, we will complete this tunnel. We are now making ROB and ROB of 16,000 crore on state roads, municipal roads, in the particularly in CRF, Central Road Fund, we are giving for that. We are making 500 bus ports like airports. It is in the process. Then emergency landing facilities available in 28 emergency landing facilities available on National Highway now. Particularly in the border area, now we have already taken the trial, and where we can land our heavy aircraft, it can be possible. The green initiative, we have taken 2 crore 50 lakhs plantation for this year. Our target is, and we will complete that. Then we are elevated corridors, animal underpass. In Delhi-Mumbai Express, excellent underpass constructed by L&T. Now we are going to inaugurate that. Then we are also we are making Amrut Sarovar. दौड़ने वाले पानी को चलने के लिए लगाओ, चलने वाले पानी को रुकने के लिए लगाओ, और रुके हुए पानी को जमीन को पीने के लिए लगाओ. गांव का पानी गांव में, घर का पानी घर में, खेत का पानी खेत में. हम लोग 1000 तालाब बना रहे हैं, स्टील स्लैग का यूज कर रहे हैं. अभी हमने टायर इंपोर्ट करने के लिए मैंने एनवायरमेंट मिनिस्टर को कहा अनुमति दो. 15% वेस्ट टायर की बिटुमेन में रबराइज पाउडर हम यूज कर रहे हैं. 30 रुपए किलो है और 50 रुपए किलो बिटुमेन है. फिर प्लास्टिक यूज कर रहे हैं. और अभी बहुत जगह पर अहमदाबाद में हम लोग डोलारा अहमदाबाद हाईवे बना रहे हैं. उसमें 20 लाख टन म्यूनिसिपल कॉर्पोरेशन का जो कचरा है वो रोड में डाल रहे हैं. तो नाउ माय मिशन इज हाउ टू यूज म्यूनिसिपल सॉलिड वेस्ट इन रोड कंस्ट्रक्शन. दैट इज टू बी वन ऑफ द इंपॉर्टेंट एजेंडा फॉर मी. We are using flash, we are using iron slag, waste plastic, jute coir, waste rubber, and demolition waste. This is very important, waste to wealth. I always talking to people with the two important philosophy. One is knowledge. The innovation, entrepreneurship, science, technology, research, skilled and successful practices, we name it as knowledge. And conversion of knowledge into wealth is the future. And the other important philosophy is no material is waste and no person is waste. It is depending upon the appropriate leadership. It is depending upon the appropriate vision of the leadership that you can convert waste into wealth. So this is exactly the agenda for all of us, that three important pillars of Indian society: ethics, economy, ecology and environment. We have to protect ecology and environment. That's the reason now from Parali we are making bitumen. We are going to launch a scheme. The Parali is a big problem. The Delhi people knows that the air pollution is because of Parali, rice straw. In Panipat, we have got a project that we are making bioethanol, 1 lakh liter bioethanol and 150 ton biobitumen from Parali. Now the CSR and Central Research Organization has already given me the proven technology. That is, from Parali we can get 70% biobitumen and 30% biochar, organic carbon, which is very important in the agriculture also. So conversion of waste to wealth, where we have taken a lot of initiative. Then the green hydrogen is a dream project. I have got the car from Toyota. The name of the car is Mirai. Mirai means future. It is on hydrogen. So today we have whatever the successful practices in the world, the new successful technology, we are ready to accept that. And that is the reason that our target is to reduce the cost of construction and without compromise with the quality of construction. The Indian infrastructure is changing very fast. We are making airports. There is a lot of revolutionary change in railway. Even in the shipping, we are making waterways. And today I feel that this definitely the dream of Prime Minister to make Indian economy as Atmanirbhar Bharat and $5 trillion economy, there is a huge economic viability is there. For any success of any project, we need proven technology, economic viability, availability of raw material, and marketability. All the things are available in India, so there is no problem about money. I am always talking in my ministry, I don't have any problem about money. My budget is 2,70,000 crore. Even I can make the road of 8 to 10 lakh crore per year, because I can go to capital market and people are waiting for me. Everyone is ready to invest with it because it is giving good return. My total income is presently 40,000 crore per year. At the end of 24, it will be 1,40,000 crore per year. So there is no money problem. We can monetize the road and we can make the construction. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
May I request you, Honorable Minister, to be able to take a few questions if you like, if you have the time. Two questions then. Thank you very much, sir. If you please raise your hand, and the gentleman there, can you give him a microphone, please?
Honorable Minister, sir, there was a very good initiative started by you, the paint out of cow dung. Sir, would love to hear about that also, because that can also create revolution. Thank you.
When I was MSME minister, we have taken the initiative and we are making enamel paint and distemper from cow dung. The cost is half the price of the available paint in the market, and it is proved to be, there are 9 special additional features there, and it is proved to be better than any paint available in the market. So we have now 140 industries in the rural area, and they are making paint, distemper from cow dung. It's a success story. It is one of the things which I am telling you, that waste to wealth. Anything? Hi.
There's a question there, gentleman. Please state your name, sir.
Yeah, my name is Vivek Shaurya. Honorable Minister, sir, I'm a startup entrepreneur, and I don't think I have seen any better program manager than yourself. Sir, what we want to learn, how do you, the larger stakeholders, farmers, landowners, how did you get around all these people to buy into this? Because all we heard about is land acquisition, getting people to adopt and see the vision that you see is the most difficult part. How did you achieve that?
Sir, problems are everywhere. I am always telling to my officers that there are some people who convert problems into opportunities, and there are some people who convert opportunities into the problems. Presently, we don't have any problem with land acquisition. We are paying reasonably good cost. Now people are coming to me for telling me, don't take our land. That is not the reason. Now they are telling me, please take our land for the road construction, because we are paying attractive remuneration to them. So there is no problem about it. Ecology and environment, forest ministry, state clearance, it is in the system. The Prime Minister has already appointed a committee under chairmanship of my ministry, and we are taking review, making follow-up. One thing is very important. As a minister, I am spending my maximum time for taking review of the projects. At my meeting, I call the contractors, consultants, and officers. I tell them what is your problem. And at the time, I call the state government officers. Even I take the many meeting with the chief ministers and the ministers. I feel that the cooperation, coordination, and communication between the stakeholder is very important. So we are already, there are problems, but still the success story is there that we are making road construction at the speed of 40 kilometers per day. Thank you.
Honorable Minister, we thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm very sorry I had to catch my flight. I'm going to Nagpur. So I'm very sorry. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
Thank you very much for your inspiring words and gracing this very special event. A big hand for the Honorable Minister, please, ladies and gentlemen.